Yeah. I tried my best to mix it up. Cinnamon doesn't exactly mix
the salt too well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So we're making it happen.
I got grapefruit flavored beer.
Nice.
No Corona.
Ricard's Radler grapefruit beer.
No Corona.
That sounds
That's
amazing.
Well, no, I do have backup. Yes. Of course, I have a Corona backup.
I would have thought you out of character if you didn't.
Well, I got today I decided to go for a regular H2OO. It's really good. It scratches the itch, but
Listen, I always have my backup water. Always.
there you go. I'm also having matcha tea on the side too, though. So.
Oh, see, there we go.
Yeah.
We've all got
we all got 2 drinks.
Yes, except I think Boom is exhibiting a little bit more of his alcoholism than we are, but
Hey, it's Friday.
True.
That's
Dude,
true. That's true.
See, the thing is, like, I don't have like a job right now, so like the days of the week practically don't exist. Like when I've been planning like YouTube collabs, that's the only way I know what day of the week it is like, oh, am I doing something today? Like, am I going live with somebody? Otherwise, I couldn't tell you. And I guess when to pick up my comics. That's about it.
Yeah. I think that's Wednesday. It's today Wednesday.
For DC, now that DC has a new distributor, you can actually buy DC on Tuesday now.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, just DC though. So it's like if you're not close to your comic book store, you're probably waiting until Wednesday anyways.
Yeah.
So
now we talk Superman, gentlemen.
I know, and I'm over here I'm over here with a Karen Berger shirt. All right, cool. Let's get things rolling. Hey guys, welcome to the 47th episode of Let's Talk Comics, where myself and another co-host in the comic book community discuss one of the many facets of the storytelling medium that is comics. Whether it be stories, creators, constructs, or adaptations, we hit it all. This week, we are joined by, of course, our regular cohort, the Canadian Cape Crusader, Comic Boom, looking stylish in his Superman hat. And rejoined for the first time in quite a while, one of your favorite geeks and mine, Lewis from the Geek Fortress, man. It's good to have you both on.
Thank you for having me.
Good to have the Geek Fortress on.
It is, man. It is good. The last time Lewis and I collabed was on a Doom Patrol video, which we're in the talks to set up another series again where we do some sort of DC TV reviewing. So that should be fun.
Those were great. Those were amazing. I miss those. Those
were so much fun, man. I missed the shit out of doing that. So we'll definitely have to set it up. But I just want to address everybody in the chat that is here before we get underway. We have Tahilum29 just saying, good to see you, Dark Knight Nation. And crew, it's good to see you too, man. Thank you for showing up. Let's see. We also have Aaron Vio just saying, hey, also, air is overrated anyway. Also true. And I guarantee you 30 years from now, we're going to be paying for fresh air.
Yeah, it's going to start.
What a time to be alive. And then we also have Corey O'Neill just saying, hello, Dark Knight Nation. Hello, Comic Boom. Hello, Geek Fortress. Well, hello, man.
Oh, hello. First of all, hello to you. And you're awesome for having Becky Lynch as your thumbnail. You, sir, are awesome.
Yes, man. Thank you. Yeah, it is a quality thumbnail. Thank you for popping in, man. Make sure you check these guys out. So again, before we get underway in the conversation, I want to prompt everybody, please make sure to check these two gentlemen out. You can subscribe to their channels using links in the description below, as well as their Twitters. Lewis actually just hit 1,000 subscribers, so everybody give him a quick round of applause.
Thank you.
Very well deserved, but make sure you
thank you, sir.
Make sure that you check both of these gentlemen out. And if you end up enjoying the conversation, please do me a big old favor, because I am a whore for likes. Like this video and subscribe down to my channel below as well. But I think it is time, gentlemen, to get into the meat of the conversation. And this was kind of prompted by many things. Judging, I guess, via my own judgment, and you gentlemen are more than welcome to disagree. But I feel like we're not getting Superman as he should be in comics. We clearly haven't gotten him in cinema in quite a long time. And I think that with the way the world is right now, more than ever, I think we need Superman. I think we need the idealism, the heroism, truth, justice, and I would say the human way more now than ever. And I just thought that this was such an important conversation to kind of have, especially, you know, with these two guys right here. So I'm curious, before we kind of start going into all of the little nuances, I know, you know, this conversation, obviously I have my perspective on why it's important. Why do you guys think the world needs Superman more than ever? And if not, feel free to disagree. We'll start, I guess, with Lewis, since this is his first time on in a while. What are you thinking, man?
Oh, again, thank you for having me. Thank you for the awesome introduction. I think more than just like the character of Superman, the stories of Superman, we just need that someone to look up to kind of thing. Because I feel like we are living in a time where the leaders that you're supposed to look up to are not really doing a good job. And I'm not going to get too much into that. But I feel like it's always good to have something. I've always used comic books as an escape. Same thing with movies, things like that. Back when World War II was happening, Superman was kicking Hitler's ass, you know? And that was one of the things that people loved about it, you know? But at the same time, it created controversy because they were like, hold up. He's solving the war in like a snap of a finger, but then over here we are fighting real soldiers, blah, blah, blah. So there's a thin line in there, but there's something magical about being able to escape into a story, especially of a larger than life character like Superman. He's my favorite superhero of all time. You know that. I don't know if a lot of you guys may or may not know that. And I relate a lot to him, you know. Outcast, coming to a new place, like he's always like, he's afraid yet not afraid, kind of like the Fight for Fighting song Superman. I don't know, it's very relatable. He's a very relatable character. And it's ironic because he's an alien, but sometimes he could be the most human person in the room.
Exactly.
And I think, and it's such a quality that I feel like, yes, Batman, it's Batman, you know, he's this, he's that, yes. But Superman could literally flick you away. But the fact that he has that self-control, unless we count Injustice, but the fact that we, we don't, that's, you know, but the fact that he has that self-control, that humanity inside of him, that's what I think we need. That's why we need a Superman. We need a humanity that some humans, and like you said before, the human way. And I want to touch on that because we have lost our ways as human. We're letting our petty differences, our petty wars, pardon my French, but minuscule shit get in the way of life. Oil, land. I mean, we're human. We're all living in the same planet. Like, one of the best speeches ever given by a president was from a movie, Independence Day, when he says, today we put aside our petty differences because we're going to fight against something bigger, you know? And I think that's what the world needs more of. So the idea of a Superman, somebody who is larger than life and somebody who is more human than anybody else, even though he's an alien, I think that is just majestic. And I know a lot of people don't like him because he's overpowered, this and that. But to me, he doesn't act like an overpowered dick. He acts very human, you know? And I think that's one of the things that I love the most about Superman. And that's why I think we need a Superman. We need more humanity. We need to be more human and put aside our petty ass differences.
I couldn't agree with you more, man, and I definitely couldn't have said it any better myself than you just did. But Comic Boom, anything to add to that?
Well, I mean that encapsulates it very well. You know, when it comes to superheroes, Superman, to the credit of comic books, and I think one of the longevity of comic books, I think you can draw a direct line back to the best idea that has ever been created for a superhero is Superman. He is the best idea, and he was the first. And that's a credit to the human race. Now, of course, the difficulty is living up to that ideal. And I did all kinds of little Googling here and on Superman and everything before this. And there are so many amazing Superman stories and so many different incarnations and interpretations of Superman. But, you know, Geek Fortress, when you talked about, Superman he's an inspiration, and we're supposed to, it's his humanity as well. And the world right now is kind of a really shitty spot. And it's really, I got goosebumps watching the Man of Steel movie preview, and the Superman Returns preview with Jor-El's voice, and you know,
yes,
and
I got goosebumps you mentioning it.
Yeah, I mean, just you will give the people of Earth something to strive for. They will stumble and they will fall, but in time they will join you in the sun. And right now we are stumbling. Right now, humanity, man, we are stumbling, and yet Superman in the comic books, even when he's written by Bendis, for God's sake, Superman, isn't it amazing that he will be Clark Kent? What greater compliment and faith does Superman have in humanity that he dresses as Clark Kent, I think, to be an example to us of, look, if I was human, this is how I would be, and I'm Clark Kent. This is how I would act. And as Clark Kent, he's meek, he's mild, he's confident, he's secure, he's kind, he's compassionate, and that's the optimistic side of Clark Kent. I note with some humor, Kill Bill, the movie Kill Bill, what the cynical view of Clark Kent, that Clark Kent is Superman's, that's what Superman thinks of humanity, as being weak and pathetic, and that's why he dresses like Clark Kent, because it's Superman spitting on humanity. But I don't, that's a very cynical way of looking at it. I like the fact that Superman is he uplifts us and he relates to us by living among us as us, and he sets an example as Clark Kent. Forget about Superman. He sets an example for us as Clark Kent, and that's, I think, to underscore your point, Geek Fortress, is something that ultimately is his strength. And it's also one of the reasons, by the way, that I don't like the revelation of his secret identity.
Oh yeah,
I kind of like that dichotomy. To me, it's like when you have Jor-El, Kal-El, and Clark Kent, you've got the Holy Trinity. You got the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and you got the God, you got the divine in Jor-El, and in Superman, you have the Son, which embodies the hope and everything else, and then you sort of got the Clark, which is the humanity and the hope and the compassion, and you got that Holy Trinity that really makes it, and that's what makes it such an enduring trichotomy of a character, is that you got all those aspects to deal with.
Yeah, and the thing about Superman, one of the things that I think makes him so special, and it's a thing that I feel like a lot of people get wrong about him, is that Superman's greatest strength isn't the ability to stop a bullet train or to, move the moon, to correct its rotation. It's his restraint, right? Like, the ability that Superman has to do such overwhelming destruction, or to just kind of cater to his own sort of basal, I like, obviously Neanderthalic doesn't make as much sense because he's not human, but those baser, more animalistic urges. And yet he uses that power with the utmost awareness, the utmost restraint, the utmost humanity, right? For an alien, Superman is arguably the most human of us all, because he uses his power to both represent and protect an ideal of what humanity should be, what we should do with our power, right? And what we should do with our agency. And it's kind of this beautiful, brilliant thing. And I don't know about you guys, but for me, when I started getting into comics and getting into these characters, I had a really hard time getting into Superman. When I was 15, 16, starting to read comics, I was very much that fanboy that was like, Batman would just kick his ass with plans and machines and kryptonite. And the older I get, and mind you, Batman's still my favorite, but the older I get, the more I value Superman, the more I want Superman. Just because, I think, and it could just be me, but as I get older, I become a little bit more skeptical of the world. And yet I long to believe in humanity as much as I don't currently all the time. And Superman is just so well representative of that. He's a symbol. He is an almighty symbol. He is elemental. And I love everything that he represents. He's special. And there's a reason why he and his symbolism has been such an endearing force, not only throughout America's culture, but the world culture. I think it was my first interview with Brian Hill, where he had went somewhere really far out east and he was wearing a Superman symbol, and a little boy just walked up to him and gave him a hug. And you know why? Because if you're wearing a Superman symbol, somebody looks at you and goes, oh, you're a good guy. You're the good guy. You know what I mean? And that level of association is so powerful and so strong. And the fact that that kind of idealism has persevered through a red S on top of a yellow background is outstanding. It is absolutely outstanding. And one thing I do want to get to, a couple folks in the chat here who have been commenting. Paul Baker joining us just says, yeah, but can he punch Goku though? That's what really matters.
Oh, you don't want to get in that conversation, man.
Yeah, no, I mean, first of all, Paul, thank you for joining us tonight. And yeah, this is representative of like every comic book social circle on the internet. It's like Superman, but can he beat this guy? Which is like this fundamental misunderstanding of Superman, I think. But we also have some big congratulations for the guy all the way on the end. Aaron VO just says, congrats to Geek Fortress. The first 1K is a huge milestone.
Thank you.
We also have,
I appreciate that. Thank you.
We also have our pal Joe just saying congrats, Geek Fortress, for 1,000 subs. Good job, bro. Good job indeed.
Thank you, Joe. Thank you. That really means a lot, guys. Thank you.
Let's see. Tehillim29 says that Superman is older than Goku, but Goku's character is set around the Monkey King and the priest Tripitaka, which I didn't know about. I knew there was some sort of folklore behind it, but that's really interesting. I'll have to look into that.
Yep.
And Aaron VO hitting us with some huge ethics here. And he says that he thinks that it speaks volumes. He's not a huge Superman fan, but he definitely appreciates one of our points. I think it was Lewis's, that the alien is the one who understands humanity. Kind of ties into immigration a bit. Someone who has gone through the process of immigrating to the U.S. usually has a better understanding of what it means to be an American because it's something they worked for, as opposed to those who don't realize the significance. Superman had to work to fit into humanity, and therefore has a stronger appreciation / understanding of humanity more than most humans. Yeah, that's a big part. You know, it's it's all about identity. But continue what you were going to say, Lewis.
No, and it's funny that Aaron brings that up because I wasn't born in the States. I was born in Ecuador, South America. So I know that struggle. I know the whole thing of living your home. I mean, now this is my home because I've been living here longer than I did over there. But coming here, adapting, and every once in a while you'll still get like an eye. There's so much racism, so much stuff like that. And yes, having to adapt and coming to understand that being an American, let's put it, it's yes, some people, yes, you're born here, you're born in America, and then you're like, okay, I'm an American. But the process that I had to go through to call myself just a legal alien, it's insane. It's something crazy. And in order to become a citizen, like the steps that you have to go through and they like the citizenship exam, just going a little off track, it's some questions like I guarantee you a lot of Americans probably don't know.
You're totally right, man. You're 100% right. My mom's an American immigrant, is a Portuguese immigrant. Sorry. And when she was talking about taking the citizenship test, and I was like, I guarantee you 90% of Americans would not pass that test.
Yep. That's what my friends and my friend, one of my best friends ever, he's a Smash Brother player. He always says the same. Guarantee you 90%, same numbers, 90% of Americans would not pass that. It's crazy. It's crazy. But yes, so that's where it mirrors with Superman. He's an immigrant. He came here, and yes, the Kens raised him with values, with love. They taught him that good moral value system of, hey, yes, just because you can punch a dude through his face doesn't mean that you should do it. Because above everything else, respect, love, and self-control. And if you have the power of a god and you can have that self-control, I think that's huge. And that's what people don't see sometimes in Superman. A lot of times they're just like, he's overpowered. But that's like saying Batman wins in a fight. Why? Because he's Batman. You can. It's so open-ended that you can go on forever. But with Superman, it's more than that. It's like his humanity. Like we've been saying throughout this chat, his humanity is bigger than most humans. And that's just something beautiful. I love it. And even if you're not a Superman fan, like Aaron said, you can appreciate it.
I note that you brought up the immigrant connection to Superman, and I think that's very powerful because one of my favorite Superman moments was in Superman All-Star Superman issue 12, where Lex Luthor gains the power of Superman and he's defeating Superman as Clark Kent, and there's a moment where Lex Luthor is overwhelmed because he suddenly gains the power of Superman, and he says, "Oh my God, is this what it's like? Is this what you see all the time?" He finally saw the world through Superman's eyes, and it humbled him, and it overwhelmed him, and eventually there was a gravity gun used, and he lost the power. But it's interesting that how Superman sees us is interesting, because I think that you say you're an immigrant, your mom's an immigrant, Dark Knight, that I think immigrants, I think a lot of Americans, they forget what it's like maybe to see America through an immigrant's eyes. To see America for the first time, those ideals that right now people are struggling with in America, that, you know, seeing humanity through a different set of eyes, I think it's really telling. And I think that there's some symbolism there, that the lesson we can take from Superman is maybe try to, you know, look at our own lives through a different set of circumstances, that maybe we can have a different kind of gratitude. Because I recall that when Superman died being killed by Doomsday, and when the new 52 Superman died, they have one thing in common. He expressed gratitude as he died. And as he died in Wonder Woman's arms, he expressed gratitude, and he did the same thing in Lois Lane's arms. And he said, "How lucky I am." It's a very touching moment, because even in the end, you know, it's all about gratitude. He gave thanks right to the bitter end. And I mean, I don't know what better life lesson you can have than that. And finally, let's not forget that at the end of Final Crisis, what did Superman wish for everyone? A happy ending.
Yeah.
Well, and you bring up like sensory perception, and I think that's kind of one of the strongest things behind Superman, right? Like I have this general belief that the more you experience the world and the more that you take in, the better person you'll become, right? You're reinterpreting different aspects of the world around you and integrating it in the way that you're going to process everything else that goes on. And the thing about Superman is, and I think what makes him so special, and it can also be torturous in a way, is how he sees and he hears everything at once. And he sees and he hears everything in different ways, and in ways that are totally incomparable to how we understand the world, right? Like whether it's the way, you know, whether it's like it was in All-Star Superman, where he can kind of see the strings of reality, right? Whether it's like Superman Birthright, where he has that kind of God vision and he can see the soul of human beings, or simply X-ray vision or thermodynamic vision, you know, he perceives the world in so many different ways. And there's so much stimuli coming in that I think, you know, it's evident in kind of earlier Superman stories when he's developing that it can be overwhelming, right? The world around us can be overwhelming. And in a situation like Superman, when you're constantly on sensory overload, it can be overwhelming, right? The world throws a lot at you. But if you take those things and you incorporate it into who you are as a person, you come out all the better for it. You know, it'd be easy for Superman to hear those things and just react animalistically like a tyrant and just, you know, stop the noise, shut it all down. But what does he do? He helps people. You know, he tirelessly, you know, goes to any possible ends to meet the means of saving a human life. No life is unvaluable to him. And I think that's a big part of his sensory perception and the way that he sees things and understands things. And by things, I mean everything. And that's really special. You know, that's one of the big defining characteristics. And I think that's part of what enables Superman to be such a great person, is that he sees people as people, no matter how different, quote unquote, they might be.
I just want to throw in that I think one of the areas of Superman that is the least talked about is the fact that of his parents. His parents are amazing. He had two amazing sets of parents. Now you can there's slightly different interpretations from, you know, timeline to timeline, era to era, but you know, you look at Jor-El, I mean, at least in the movies, and not the current Jor-El, it was kind of a psychopathic grandfather, but really Jor-El was amazing. Jor-El Jor-El gifted the planet. He chose the planet that would receive his son. He knew, he just had an instinct of knowing how the gift that his son would become. And you talk about, you know, the sensory, overcoming all those senses. And I'm thinking of the Man of Steel movie where, you know, Martha Kent, you know, young Clark Kent is at school locking himself in the closet because he's overwhelmed by the senses, and his mother is telling him to find an island and, you know, helping him with everything. And it underscores the importance of upbringing, because we all know the Elseworld stories of what happens when Superman doesn't have a good upbringing. You know, you're only as good as your parents sometimes, you know. Yep. So it's something to keep in mind.
And the mention of his upbringing kind of goes twofold, right? Because Jonathan and Martha Kent, the small town agriculturalists, you know, they kind of represent some of the best of humanity. And one thing that I think is also kind of an interesting conversation, you know, pulling from the topic of immigration and Superman as an alien, is that, you know, Superman conveniently looks like I guess, especially in the 1940s, late 1930s, the people in power, right? Like, what would it have been like for Superman if he didn't look like, you know, the white the Caucasian male, the standard Caucasian male, right? Yeah. And I think that's kind of an interesting topical conversation, and that's kind of where you can get into like Milestone Comics and the portrayal of Icon as kind of what happens if Superman doesn't look like the people who are the most socially acceptable. But a lot of, I think, Superman's dynamics do come from Jonathan and Martha Kent. Like, I feel like that sort of parental shadow that they've cast on Clark would have been so powerful that even if, you know, Superman might not have looked like I mean, I don't really know quite how to phrase it, but you know what I mean? Like the the people that were like the ideal of what an American should look like. I feel like he would still possess these extraordinary human values because of how strongly, you know, they had embedded it in him. And I was just reading before we went live, rereading Superman for All Seasons, and it's kind of the ultimate commentary on, you know, Clark's ethics and how he was raised. And, you know, that first issue, Spring, is entirely told from the narrative POV of Jonathan Kent, you know, and how he views his son. And it's this beautiful thing, man. It's absolutely beautiful. And, you know, Superman through the Kents kind of became the best of us, you know, and it's such a powerful thing.
Yeah. And that's why I personally love the portrayal of the Kents in Smallville, the TV show. Toward the end, the show was a little but I love how they showed that. Like, there's one particular scene that I really, really enjoy where Clark, he could blow his parents away, literally, you know, but he tells Clark, "You sit down," because he had done something bad. He'd been a bad boy, and Clark was like, you know, I mean, it's not about fear; it's about respect. You know, they raised him with respect for humanity, for the world. Like, it doesn't matter how strong you are, you always put respect in front of everything, you know. And I think that's a huge life lesson, especially nowadays, forever, but especially nowadays. I mean, you have people out there abusing strength, abusing force, and then you have this guy right here in comic books who can move a planet, but he doesn't even squash a spider. Because he loves life, he believes in life, and he doesn't want to hurt life because this is his new home. And as somebody who loves his home, not Kansas, not Smallville, not Metropolis, Earth, the world, he wants to protect that. And that is the view that we need. We need to stop having the horse one view and open our eyes to, we have a beautiful world. And we're the ones who are burning it, man. Sometimes literally, you know?
Yeah.
And you have to be that change. Everybody can be Superman. Not with super strength, not with X-ray vision, not with heat vision, but with actions, you know? Be the kind of person you want to read about in a comic book. Be the kind of person who wants to make the change. Be the change.
And that's where he's extended beyond the sort of American patriotic symbol, right? It goes to be said, truth, justice, and the American way. But Superman's transcended beyond that. You know, I had the mention of you know, Brian Hill having that experience going out east. But Superman's ideals and his ability to act on those things have permeated the world in a totally new and different way. And that's kind of what I love about it. And that's why I honestly feel like the True Justice and American Way moniker might need to be modified, because not only do I think the quote unquote American way has kind of corroded, I think that he stands for much more than that. You know, Superman is not, he's a man of Earth. He's not a man of America. And I you know, it speaks volumes about how he's kind of permeated our society. And we also have Tevye Smoka joining us in the chat saying Superman is relevant more than ever, and we need hope and love more than ever. Totally agree, man.
Yes, sir.
That's 100% why we're having this conversation, my friend.
And there's that Joe Kelly story that's very relevant. It's timely now. I think it's over 10 years old now. Whatever happened in Truth, Justice, and the American Way, where Superman battles the elite. It's also a cartoon. Warner Brothers did a cartoon.
Yes.
I think it's a really great segue from what your comment, Dark Knight, about just how, you know, you can still be Superman and you don't have to kill. You know, the Authority is a really cool team, and it's great to have a team that kills a lot of bad guys, but you don't have to kill the bad guys. You can still win the day and be cool and kick ass and not have to kill and wipe the floor with them, and you can still show them passion. I mean,
100%.
And you know, that's another thing that when you think about Superman, you're like, wow, it must be so hard to be this guy. Because you could literally break somebody with a hug. So every handshake this man gives, every hug, anything that he does, he always has to be constantly careful. But again, due to that respect to humanity, that love, he doesn't want to hurt anybody. He could. He could go and kill everybody, but he won't. And that is just so, again, it comes to that whole having power, but knowing how to use it. I hate to quote Spider-Man, but the whole responsibility and everything, but you know,
I want to give a
beautiful thing right there.
I want to build on your point, Geek Fortress on with the Superman Muhammad Ali. What I love about this story, considered by many to be one of the best stories of all time, Superman he battles Muhammad Ali in a boxing match. An alien race comes to Earth, and he's forced to fight Muhammad Ali. And he fights Muhammad Ali under a red sun in a boxing match. And of course he's going to lose because you can't beat Muhammad Ali, right?
Of course, of course.
What I love about this story is that it's just beautifully drawn by Neil Adams. And Superman gets his butt kicked. I mean, but he gets his butt kicked brutally by Muhammad Ali. But he has to put on a show, and Muhammad Ali knows he's got to do it. And Superman has no ego. He takes the beating. And then he recovers. He gets exposed to yellow sun. Wins. He beats the alien armada, while Muhammad Ali beats them on the street level. And it's just a great story about how humble Superman is. Superman he did not care at all that he lost to Muhammad Ali. It wasn't about his ego at all. And of course, I love the way they portray Muhammad Ali also having, Ali has an ego, but in a good way.
Yeah.
But it's a really good story.
Yeah, I totally agree. And piggybacking off of what you were both saying, man, that's exactly why when we started this conversation, why I said Superman's greatest strength is not his super strength. It's his restraint. Yep. Because not only is it difficult in and of itself to restrain yourself. I mean, we're human, right? We're like fallible. So, you know, we restrain ourselves physically, we restrain ourselves emotionally, right? On so many different levels, right? Like if somebody pisses you off, you restrain yourself potentially from getting into a physical conflict. You restrain yourself from thinking less of them, right? You have to step back, feel your inner Superman, and sort of let yourself interpret all of this sensory information, take a step back, view the moment for what it is, and act on that rather than everything. And it's so much more difficult for Superman, right? Like you were saying, not only could he squash someone like a bug, but it'd be so easy to act on those instincts and do some catastrophic damage. Or for him to even build a resentment for humanity, because at times humans can be fucking horrible, but he retains this love for humanity and for what we can be, right? For the best of us. And that's what I think is so powerful, that he's able to retain that and maintain that idealism and act on it. And I'm curious for both you guys and everybody watching, what was your first exposure to Superman? And since Geek Fortress went first last time, boom, I'm curious. What's the first time you remember seeing Superman?
It was actually Superboy. It was Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes. It was I can't remember the exact issue, but it was Superboy and the Legion of Superheroes in a comic book shop, and that alongside then Superman teamed up with Black Lightning. I remember reading that early on, and yeah, and what put it over the top for me was, I mean, look, I was 7 years old when Superman the movie came out, and yeah, that I mean that. When he caught Lois Lane and she says, you know, when he says, "Don't worry, I got you," and she says, "You got me. Who's got you?" That was crazy. I mean, I'll never forget that for as long as I live. That's just amazing. I mean, that just blew me away. And Christopher Reeve will forever be. In fact, I even have this. This is always by my side on my computer. It's Superman 3, but I've got But anyways, I love Christopher Reeve, so I always have. He's just awesome. He'll always be in my heart of hearts, the Superman that I know and love.
That's 100%. Awesome. I love that. Lewis, I'm curious too. Does your first exposure to Superman, does that extend to even like when you were living in Ecuador, or was it more when you came to America? What's your early relationship with Superman?
Ever since I was in Ecuador, because I watched Superman the movie actually when I was, I mean, time was different. I was 5 years old in 1995. So that was the first time that I saw it. It was like playing in the background. And I remember vividly being like, oh, because I thought it was so cool that a man could fly, you know? And after that, my uncle had like a shed full of like old comic books. And they were in Spanish, of course. And he had like a reprint version of Superman #1. And I read it, and I was like, I'm in, you know. And I mean, I had already been watching the Super Friends cartoons before, little things here and there, you know, like morning cartoons and stuff like that. But I wasn't into comic books yet per se, because one, unfortunately, comic books are not as popular as they are here in Ecuador and in a lot of South American countries, which stinks. So what would happen is like a lot of my, before I learned English, a lot of my cousins who lived here already, who were born here, or my uncles, they would send me with like my grandma who went back and forth, old comic books or like old stuff like that. And then I would just look at the pictures. And a lot of them were Superman, Spider-Man, and the X-Men. So those were like my three big ones. And I used to watch the X-Men cartoon, the 90s Spider-Man cartoon, all of that stuff. And then in the 2000s, the Superman, the animated series came out, along with the Batman a few years before, then Superman, then Batman Beyond, and then eventually Justice League came out. And I feel like Justice League did such a good job because you have Superman in the team. You would feel you don't need anybody else. But no. Superman is such a good leader. He's such a good character to it, you know? And Justice League Unlimited actually has one of the best monologues ever by Superman. The World Made of Cardboard. I don't know if you guys know which scene I'm talking about.
Yeah.
When he just says, you know what? I always hold back.
Yep.
But
against
with you,
Darkseid,
big boy, yes. And he's like, but with you, big guy, I'm going to let it go. And he just whoops that ass, man. And it's one of the most... I saw that scene like 100 times the first time. I just rewind it, because it was so good. So yeah, my first exposure, just to summarize the answer, it was through Christopher Reeve. That was my first exposure to Superman. It was Superman the movie, and then after that, he was always my Superman, and to this day, he's also my Superman. And even though I didn't have the pleasure and the honor of watching it in the movie theaters when it came out, because I wasn't born yet, not by choice, I still love it, and he's my favorite Superman to this day. And he really made us believe that a man could fly.
That's awesome. That's astounding. For me, it was actually watching reruns of the Max Fleischer cartoons. I mean, just that brilliant old school animation. That Superman symbol will always stick with me. Yellow triangle, black background, and the simple S. I just remember being kind of astounded as a kid. You know, like I mean, you know, you look at Superman and you just get so caught up in the grandeur, right? Like, you know, we can leap tall buildings with a single bound faster than a locomotive. You know what I mean? Like, it was kind of magical. And, you know, it was my generation, really my childhood when the Justice League stuff started coming out. And, you know, I remember, you know, Tim Daly, like the voice of Tim Daly, like that's my Superman voice. You know, that's the voice I hear when I read Superman. And obviously, you know, getting that exposure was like none other. I think that generation of comic book readers that got my head start because of animation. I mean, you know, my early Batman exposure was Batman the
Nothing wrong
Animated
with
Series. Yeah. Into Justice League, again, the Max Fleischer cartoons that I used to watch on reruns. And although at the time, like I said, it did really take me until early adulthood to really appreciate Superman for what he means, right? Beyond just the guy that can literally do anything, which I think is a kind of a misunderstanding that a lot of people have. I think a lot of people tend to view Superman that way, as just like this unstoppable force and a movable object. Yeah, and he's so much more than that. And you know, to their credit, you know, they do make a point that Superman can get boring and he can get unrelatable. That's true.
I agree.
And I think that's why it's so important that, you know, DC Comics and whoever they decide to let write it in the comics or let handle that character in any other sort of multimedia project, they need to be careful. And here's something that I know not a lot of people don't love Dan DiDio, but he had made a statement at the beginning of DC Rebirth, and he had said, you can always tell how well the entirety of the main line is by how good the Superman book is. And I really am beginning to totally agree with that. You know, like DC Rebirth, that early first maybe year and a half, 2 years of DC Rebirth was like some of the greatest, you know, general comics DC had put out in years. What was also phenomenal, Superman by Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason. And I, you know, one of my favorite eras of DC Comics was also, I would say, like early to mid 2000s. And you just got a slew of phenomenal, I would say even to the late 2000s, you just get a slew of phenomenal Superman runs like Joe Kelly, Jeff Johns, with and without Dick Donner, you know. So Superman defines a good amount of DC Comics, and I think it's really important that you have the right hands playing in that cookie jar. But I'm curious, for everybody watching this, both live and not live, what was your first exposure to Superman? Let me know down in the comments below. So I think we can kind of start breaking off now that we've had such a great full-body discussion on Superman as a construct, about kind of Superman in different avenues. And one thing that I think is definitely worth bringing up is in film, right? We haven't had a Superman film in a while. There's been a lot of controversy surrounding whether or not we'll see another actual eponymous Superman film anytime in the near future. And one thing I want to bring up that came out of an article, I think it was about a week ago, and I'll read a little bit of it verbatim here. I'll actually put it on share screen to credit the folks who put this article out. Let's see, share screen. Tab. Okay, there we go. So I think this is from Geek Tyrant. And so I guess some sort of representative of Warner Brothers came out and said that they don't think that a standalone Superman movie would be successful right now. And so the article says that it's been reported that Henry Cavill's Superman will make a cameo appearance in an upcoming DC movie, and that he might be utilized the same way that Nick Fury is utilized in the MCU. This hasn't been confirmed, but we do know that there is no new solo film being planned right now. So why aren't we getting that solo film? According to Heroic Hollywood, whose reliability is very much 50-50, sometimes they're right on the money, sometimes not so much, the studio believes that, quote, a standalone Superman movie would not be successful at this time. Perhaps once there's more momentum after playing a supporting role in some successful DC films, there would be more of a chance for a standalone film. And apropos of this conversation, I think it's pretty safe say that I think we all think that that's pretty much bullshit. But Lewis, I'm curious. You know, feel free to start up the conversation here. How do you feel about that?
Like you said, man, it's bullshit. First of all, I enjoy Man of Steel. Was it the best movie? No. Was it the worst movie? Hell no. You know? Was it a different approach on the character? Perhaps. Was Henry Cavill a good Superman? I believe so. I think he's like better than Brandon Routh. I mean, don't get me wrong, Brandon Routh, then when he stops the plane, that's an amazing scene, you know? But I think Henry Cavill was good. I mean, but you can only blame the actor so much. I mean, just like in comic books, you have a bad writer, people are going to hate it. And same thing happens in movies, you know? But I think there's so much to do with Superman. But you know what's one thing about Superman that they always kind of mess up? They kind of always go for the same villains. It's either Zod or Lex Luthor. And he's got... I would love to see a movie with Brainiac trying to take over. You know? I would love to see a movie where actually Darkseid tries to take over, you know? Oh, I would like to see a movie with the origins of Parasite, maybe. You know, I feel like that could be something. You know, I mean, I'm not a writer by a long shot, but I think that I can come up with a few ideas for how it could happen. You know, like it's just there's so many possibilities, and you're really saying that Superman. It's the way they're making it sound, which pisses me off. Is like they're saying like Superman. Nobody really wants to see a Superman movie, and they're almost like brushing it off the table. Yeah, and you really saying that you're gonna put him as like a Nick Fury kind of character, just showing up every once in a while, like out of the shadows. And you're like, what's he gonna show up? Be like, hey, I have the Justice League edition right here. Let's do it again. No, you know, it all comes in the nutshell of people misunderstanding Superman, and even these movie writers don't get him. And for example, going back to Justice League, the movie, it wasn't the best movie, but there's one scene in particular which I think I spoke to you about, when I was like, yes, that's Superman. That is what we need. And this is what he's one in front of Batman, and Batman's talking to him, and he's like, and then Superman just tells him, hold on, civilians, and flies away to go and rescue them. That's Superman, dude. That's Superman right there. Hold on, Batman. I don't care what you're saying right now. I'm saving those people right now. So we need more of that. And yes, Man of Steel was more of like an origin story, which do we need an origin story again for Superman? I don't know. It's half and half. I'm in the middle about it. But just like how they redid Spider-Man, you don't need to see Uncle Ben dying again. You don't need to see Krypton exploding again. You don't need to see whatever. You don't need to see Spider-Man going in the ring and fighting a wrestler and getting his uncle killed, whatever. Same thing. You don't need to see Superman growing up again. Granted, in Man of Steel is just flashbacks, but if you have it established already, and if as a bonus you can keep Henry Cavill, who I think is a great actor and he does a great Superman in my opinion.
Agreed.
You can pull it off. You can pull it off. And is there stories? Yes. Is there a good actor to play him? Hell yes. Is there a fandom for him? Fuck yeah. Of course. You know?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. It's just that it annoys me that people would even say that they want to put him as a background character. That, like in Shazam, when all you saw was that stunt double, like from here down being Superman, even that like made me like, ooh, you know? But it's just because that's what Superman inspires. You see Superman and you're like, oh my God. I don't know if you've ever seen the documentary, Look Up in the Sky, The Amazing Story of Superman.
Yeah.
And they say that the two things that people recognize the most in the world, number one, Mickey Mouse, number two, Superman. And like you said, it's worldwide. No matter where you go, I guarantee you, whether you are in the States or whether you're in Japan, people know who Superman is, you know? And so the pull and the knowledge of the character is there. I mean, a lot of us grew up watching cartoons, watching some of us grew up watching Christopher Reeve. Some of us grew up watching Tom Welling. Some of us may have grown up just right now watching Henry Cavill, whatever, you know? But the stories are there. You can write a good Superman story. You just have to find the right person, the right group of people, if anything. But it can be done.
It's frustrating how many people want, you know, it's almost galling how many people want Superman to be dark all the time. And that's been a criticism of him, and that he's not dark enough. But the thing is that he's earnest, he's pure, and he's honest, and that's something that that's where the villain comes into play. So you really focus on the goodness of Superman, and you know, Superman saves people because he can. He does the right thing. He is always taking the bullet for someone else. And he always finds a way to do the impossible. That's what I think his shining grace is. And I think that one of the things that underscored a controversy of Man of Steel was, of course, you know, and we could talk for hours on this one topic, but you know, whether or not it was appropriate when he snapped, you know, General Zod's neck. We can agree or disagree whether or not that was appropriate. I personally, you know, I don't. It's not a hill I'll die on by any stretch, but I personally would have preferred him not have killed Zod. I wish he would have found
it. It could have been avoided. It could have been avoided. I mean,
you know, because I think that what makes Superman stand out is that he's the one guy that will find a way. I don't mind when Batman kills. I even don't mind when Wonder Woman kills because I think it's in her nature, quite frankly.
Of course.
Superman, you know, I think he's the guy that he would find a way. Because he's Superman, he does the impossible, and you know, I'm gonna give props to Tom King, because Tom King's Walmart Superman story, Up and Away, where Superman literally flies to the ends of the universe to just save one life, just one girl's life. He never gave up. He did ridiculous. I mean, it was I don't know, 12 parts of that story, but it shows Superman relentlessness, and all for one single life. It matters. And it's stuff like that. It's the beauty of Superman lies in the details and in the nuance. And that's why it can be a very hard character to write, because on the surface, he might appear to be boring because he's always so perfect. But let me just put this out to you. How many people have read the Bible? Now, I'm not religious, but a lot of people don't read the Bible. It's the number one sell book on the planet 10 times over, the Bible. How many people actually enjoy reading the Bible? Probably very few. And yet, how many people recognize Superman? You know, it's right next to Mickey Mouse, right? The most recognized. Sometimes when something is so familiar, you take it for granted. And I think it's telling that the most popular book is the Bible. The most popular character is Superman, and yet here we are. We got people that will ridicule the Bible, and we got people that will say Superman is boring. And there's a disconnect there, because if I had to live my life one way, you know, I'd probably pick Superman over the Bible.
I hear you. And that's why they killed him back in the day, because people were saying that the stories were going nowhere, nothing was good. So they were like, okay, you want to talk crap? This is what's going to happen to Superman. And they kill him. And look how that happened. I think, unless I'm wrong, the most sold comic book ever, right? The Death of Superman, unless that's changed.
Well, I think
one of the top, at least.
I still think it's X-Men #1 by Claremont and Jim Lee.
Okay,
but it's up there.
Top 10.
I am 100% sure that the death, and I'll say 99.9% sure, just to be safe. But I'm very sure that the Death of Superman is DC's #1 selling comic of all time.
There you go. Yeah. So yeah, I mean, sometimes you're right. Boom. Maybe you need people to miss the character. You take him for granted, and then you'll see what happens when you don't get something. It just upsets me that we're gonna miss out on Henry being a Superman. That hurts me, honestly, because I think it's been a while since we got a good Superman. And ever since Reeve, I have not said, hey, that's Superman. Because even Tom Welling, yes, he was a good Clark Kent, but we never saw Superman, the whole no flight, no tights thing, you know? We saw him running toward the camera and opening his shirt, and that was it. And even that, I was like, it looked awkward. I was like, wait, what?
Yeah.
You know? But whatever, I'll take it. He was a good Clark Kent, you know? And it's hard to say, hey, that's a good Superman. And besides some little things that I didn't like about Man of Steel, one already mentioned, he was a good Superman, I think, you know?
Yeah, and there's a couple of things from what Boom was saying that I think are worth unpacking. One of which, you know, and it's something that we've all kind of reiterated, is that it's really frustrating that these movie studios don't think it's worth the time of day, because, I mean, like this entire conversation is very much like controversial, contrary to that. I mean, there are three different guys from three totally different spots in the continent of North America that got together just to have a fucking conversation about why the world needs Superman and about why he's more relevant than ever on the grandest scheme possible, right? Like
Yep.
we're in the middle of perhaps one of the biggest civil rights movements that the world has ever seen.
Yeah.
And you're telling me that the superhero that is ultimately about humanity and human idealism isn't relevant? Are you? And I'll
That's a
use
slap in the face.
I'll use my big swear card right now. Are you fucking kidding me? Like it's absolutely preposterous that could be said, especially right now, in every single avenue possible. We need Superman now more than ever, whether it's the movies, the comics, television, fuck, put him on radio again. We need Superman.
I listen.
And so I also want to talk about Paul Baker's comment, and I agree with him more than, the whole Cavill's Superman and Man of Steel snapping Zod's neck. Him killing Zod wasn't like the straw that broke the camel's back for me in kind of Zack Snyder's vision. I actually liked Man of Steel. I enjoy Man of Steel, and I thought that the take was very interesting because obviously, I mean, whether or not Zack Snyder's use of the religious imagery and symbolism might be a little bit overbaked, I think that it's very present in Superman's mythology. Paul Baker brings up this, and I agree with him. He says that his main beef with Man of Steel was that it clearly had priorities besides being a good Superman movie. He'll never forget that scene after the battle where he and Lois slowly kiss in the crater, while you know that Clark can definitely hear thousands of people screaming for help in the ruins of Metropolis. But fuck them, because he wants to kiss. And
there you go. And then you look at the scene in Justice League when he literally told Batman to shut up because he had to go rescue people.
They're two totally different Supermen. Like the best part about Justice League was, I wouldn't say the general third act, but all the Superman stuff in the third act. I mean, from the John Williams score to Superman coming up, and the cinematography on his suit is actually red, blue, and you know what I mean? It's like brighter colors.
Red and blue that we love, the bright,
right?
The epic.
It was iconic, and I totally agree with Paul, because the thing for me, especially with Zack Snyder's take on Superman, and with him being so early on in his career, I understand him killing Zod, right? I understand him having to make that compromise because he's inexperienced, right? At this point, it just comes down to making the difficult choice. Are we preserving human life, or am I going to preserve a tyrant who wants to end human life, right? And he makes a tough call. And I think that, especially in a Superman origin film, that's a decision that I don't mind Superman making, because it gives him a point to grow. And it's one of the reasons, for example, I'll draw the analogy to Batman Begins, when he doesn't save Ra's al Ghul. Maybe that's not super representative of a veteran Batman, but a younger Batman who still has more to learn, yeah, I could see that being a decision to be made, because clearly they have to develop into, the symbol, right? This elemental force for good, this uncompromising kind of light in the world. And you don't just start with that, right? Like when you turn on a light, there's a process. No matter how quick it is, the light has to turn on. So I totally agree with Paul Baker's sentiments here on the film. And I'm wondering for you guys, and this is a twofold question involving another Superman movie. One, who would you want to direct a Superman movie? And two, would you keep Cavill or recast him as somebody else? And if you would recast him, who? Personally, I like Cavill. I would definitely give him another chance. But I'm curious, what do you guys think? Boom, we'll start with you. And everybody in the chat, let us know down below.
Well, first of all, I definitely keep Henry Cavill. I like Henry Cavill. I've got no problem with him at all. I think I thought he was doing another Superman, but I must be behind on my pop culture. I guess maybe he's been dismissed. I thought he was coming back, but maybe.
It's really up in the air. There's a lot going on around that, where they're saying that he still has contracted appearances for films, and he obviously says that he still wants to be Superman. But There were also a lot of early things going on a couple months ago where they were saying Henry Cavill's completely out. And then I think like more recently they were saying, oh, maybe not. They're actually back in talks with Cavill because I guess his involvement in The Witcher is very, very time demanding. So they're kind of trying to work something out, but it is up in the air. Like a lot of it is really hearsay, but continue.
Yeah. I actually read somewhere that Netflix wanted to see if they could cut him off the contract with DC. I don't know how real this was, but they wanted to see. They told that they would pay any fines or any kind of anything because they want him full time. But Cavill doesn't want to give up on the character, and I don't blame him. If you were playing Superman, would you give up on the character?
Hell no.
Exactly. Not just because, heck, I have financial security. No, my geeky ass would be like, in Superman.
Yeah.
You know? I'd be like, yeah, money's nice, but I'm Superman.
Yeah.
You know? And I feel like he loves the character. And if it were up to him, I feel like he would do anything in his power to save him, you know?
Yeah. I agree, but Boom, you were saying.
Well, one of my weaknesses in terms of pop culture is that I've never really feel I've gotten a handle on the on directors of movies, to be honest with you. Because, like, for example, I really like Sam Mendes movies, but for some reason I don't seem to have an instinct. I don't know if Sam Mendes would make a good Superman movie, but just because I liked 1917 doesn't mean that he'd make a good, you know what I mean? I like Patty Jenkins, how she did the Wonder Woman movie, except for the third act, which I understand was Jeff Johns influenced. Honestly, I wouldn't even mind Patty Jenkins taking a stab at Superman. I suppose. I'll be honest.
That's my choice too, by the way.
Yeah, I mean, but honestly, I feel I plead some ignorance when it comes to really having a sort of a knowledge base on directors and who's better than not. I just like to me, it comes down to what's the director's view of the world. And I think this is something that a lot of people don't like. It's one thing, the difference between a theme versus a thesis. The theme is is what the character does in the story, but the thesis is what what's the director's vision of the world. Because look, if you got a cynical view of the world, if you're generally somebody who's hard line, you got a cynical view of the world, that's going to affect your vision of Superman. And let me just be clear on this. My vision of Superman has changed in I'm 51 years old, man. When I collected Superman when I was 7 years old, I had a very different conception of Superman than I did when I was 30 or 40. I went through my Punisher phase. I wanted Superman to be darker. Now I'm back. I'm 51. I see the world's gone to shit. I want Superman to be more Christ-like and more Messiah-like. I used to hate Superman Returns, the movie, because he never threw a punch. Now I watch Superman Returns and I have a new respect for that movie. And I hated it when I didn't hate it, but I didn't like it as much. I like it more now because I almost feel like we need that kind of Superman, maybe that throws fewer punches than the one that throws more. So it's funny how Superman is his own mythology, and just like all mythologies, my conception of that mythology, it's a lot like religion. It's like a relationship to a god almost. Get me in a different mood, and I'm going to give you a different opinion on Superman.
Yeah, and before Lewis kind of goes into his picks, I do want to comment on what you were saying there. I 100% agree with you on Superman Returns. I remember watching that as a kid and falling asleep, and it's because it's very dialogue heavy, very kind of character heavy. But as an adult, you rewatch this movie, and whether or not you like Bryan Singer, because I know he's kind of a controversial guy, boy, did he put something out that fundamentally understands who Superman is and what makes him important. Like it's a beautiful film. It is really beautiful. And I agree with that sentiment. As I've grown up, I've really learned to appreciate that movie. But with that being said, Lewis, what would be your ideal choices for the director and actor of Superman? And how do you feel about Superman Returns?
Okay. I like Superman Returns when it came out. I went to a midnight release. What was that, 2006? Am I making that up?
Something like that.
I believe it was 2006. So I was still in high school. And I didn't care. I think I had school the next day. I don't remember too well the details, but I had a midnight release, and I went with a couple of people who hated it because you know they gave me the classic, oh, he's overpowered, this and that, and whatever. Oh yeah, he's big, lifting a stone into space, even though. And I'm like, I think you're missing the point here. He had a piece of kryptonite in his back, and he still did. Again, that's Superman. He doesn't give up, you know. And was Brandon Routh the best Superman? Probably not, you know. But you gotta see. Maybe also the nostalgia bug hit me a little because technically, not technically, it did continue the Christopher Reeve story, so I like that. You know, so I like the whole idea of Superman having left because he thought Krypton was still there, and then he came back years later, and everything has changed. Also very relatable, you know. But did I hate the movie? Of course not. Of course not. At the time, I enjoyed the movie, and I haven't watched it in years now, to be honest with you. But every once in a while, I do this thing where every once in a while, just a whole bunch of superhero scenes from other movies just hit my head, and then I just pop the Blu-ray in and I rewatch it.
Yeah.
And one of the ones that I rewatched the most is No Man's Land from Wonder Woman, because I think that's one of the best movie scenes ever, you know? And there's that. There's in Spider-Man 2 when he stopped the train, just to give you a few examples. And yeah, and I love it, you know? And I think that the movie overall, yes, it could have been better. That one felt a little more like a soap opera, kind of. Like if you want to talk about love story, that was like a love story. It was more like Lois and Clark type thing. I definitely felt that Dean Cain vibe. But I like Dean Cain, so just a side note. And as far as a director, I would not be opposed to a Todd Phillips Superman movie. Or yeah, I would love a Todd Phillips Superman movie, or even a James Wan, you know, because he did a great job with Aquaman. So I think he might be able to hit something out of the park right there. But yes, Patty Jenkins is also one of my choices, because when you mentioned it, I was like, yes.
Yeah.
Because I think she would do a great job. But I think those will be my top three.
So
I feel like they have a different approach on it.
Yeah, I'm super. There's one of those picks that really stood out to me, and that's Todd Phillips. I thought that was a really interesting pick, because when I think of like a Todd Phillips Superman movie, I almost think of I don't know if you guys, I know Boom did. I'm sure you read it as well, Lewis. The Tom King Action Comics 1000 story, that very pensive, very symbolic kind of Superman story. And obviously, you know, for those of you watching that don't recognize the name, Todd Phillips directed Joker, which is obviously very thought-provoking. So that's a pretty like astounding pick that I never would have considered. But I'm also like actively not saying no to that movie. So that's interesting. What makes you think Todd Phillips? I'm curious.
Honestly, I enjoy Joker, number one, but I've seen his work in the past before Joker. I think he's done a great job. And I just like the way he approaches things. And I saw an interview with him, actually. He was in the Blu-ray for Joker. And he respects the crap out of the characters, dude. Like the way that he talked about Joker, the way he talked about Gotham City, even the way he talked about, even though this Joker will never meet Batman, the way he spoke about Batman and the origins of the Joker, he respects it. It's like he did his homework beforehand, you know. He who knows? I mean, I don't know the guy personally, but who knows? He might read comic books too, or he just knows how to do his homework. Either way, he got me. He's got my vote, you know.
That's
and
awesome.
I believe that after watching that interview, I actually got an itch and was like, wow, this guy needs to do more superhero movies. Which even this one, he was like, you know what? Okay, but I want Joaquin Phoenix. And even Joaquin Phoenix at first was like, I don't know. And then he ended up taking the role, which I think was amazing. So I don't know. Maybe he'll have an idea to cast somebody that at first will be like, wait a minute. But then we'll be like, yes, you know? But if we can keep Henry, going back to the other question, I love him as Superman.
Yeah.
I think he did a fantastic job. And I must sound like a broken record, but again, that part when he shoots Batman and he flies away, I think that's amazing. We need more like that. Like imagine Henry Cavill Superman with more than that, with more like that, with the direction of a director who kind of can take a different approach. Who knows? Maybe he can even make some like an Injustice movie or something like that, since that would be more like a tone, more like that. But then that goes with the whole dark Superman thing. But I think done right, it could work out. You know?
Yeah.
But I feel like he would do a great job. And after watching Joker like 9 times, I just feel like he would do a fantastic job. He respects the characters. He respects his actors. He respects the script, but he's not afraid to take another direction. if that makes sense.
That is a super inspired pick, and I love every part of your explanation. Funny little side story too. When Joker came out last year, it was funny. We were like moving at breakneck pace because Rocky had just landed in New York, and it literally, as soon as he gets to the Airbnb, we like ran over to the early Joker premiere. We went to this AMC in Harlem and just like busted ass to go see that movie on like the pre-opening night screening, like the Thursday night before. And it was like the perfect way to start out the Comic-Con weekend.
It was good. Yeah.
Nice.
But yeah, I just figured apropos of Todd Phillips.
Yeah, I'm glad. I'm glad you agree. I don't know. I just feel like it's something that maybe nobody was hoping for, but maybe now that I mention it, it puts a bug in your brain. Like, holy shit!
It does. It does.
You know,
it's like anybody could go back and watch the replay. As soon as you mentioned Todd Phillips, my ears just kind of perked up because I was just like, man, that's an interesting pick. And like, at no point was I ever leaning towards no. I was like, that's different. And I'm like, the more I think about it, the more I'm like, that could be really, really interesting. Especially with his cinematographer, Lawrence Sher, who works intimately with Todd Phillips, I think would do some pretty amazing things visually with Superman. So that's one of the things that makes me even more interested about the potential of a Todd Phillips Superman movie. And before I get into my pick, I did want to shout out one of our wonderful viewers, Aaron VO. He actually just left a very, very generous tip with a quick little comment that I wanted to address. And he just says, keep up the great work, bro. Loving the conversation tonight. I super appreciate that, man. That's very, very generous of you. And thank you for watching. Thank you for participating. And again, for your mind-blowing generosity. To be 100% honest with you, this is probably one of my favorite conversations that I've ever had on this show, on Let's Talk Comics. Just to be 100% blunt. And we're nearing 50 episodes. So that says something.
Wow.
So
that's an honor, dude. Oh, so good, right?
it is milestone. So as we continue on to this conversation, Aaron, thank you so much for being so generous and for being such an active member of the Dark Knight Nation community. Thank you. It means a lot. And obviously thank you to these two gentlemen for sitting down and just having such a great conversation. This is obviously isn't the end of the conversation.
Thank you for having me. This was long overdue. I just been busy with life and this and that, but I miss this. I do.
Yeah. It's outstanding. So thank you, everybody. But so yeah, for my Superman cinematic picks, Patty Jenkins is definitely a name that I consider. Although she'd probably be like my third or fourth pick. Although if you said Patty Jenkins Superman, I'd say yes. Like you two, I am also very much 100% Henry Cavill. Let's let Henry Cavill be Superman until he's old enough to do Kingdom Come Superman. Like, I'm in. Let's do it.
Can you imagine?
In terms of a director, there's a couple that I kind of have on a short list. One of them, who I think would also be spectacular at a potential Fantastic Four movie, is Brad Bird. I think Brad Bird would direct an absolutely astounding Superman movie. He gets the tonality, he gets the symbolism behind the characters, and can ultimately make a film that is simultaneously filled with drama but heart. So Brad Bird is definitely up there for me. I had another one in mind, and I don't know why I'm blanking on it now. This one I think is one that I don't think many people have talked about. James Mangold to direct Superman. I think James Mangold would do an absolutely astounding job. Some recent credits include Ford v Ferrari and Logan. Logan is arguably the best comic book movie of all time. Ford v Ferrari, I absolutely love because there's a fundamental understanding of character dynamics. That movie was all character. Superman movies are all character. He is an Oscar multi-time Oscar nominated director and writer. And I think, you might want to get Jeff Johns as a co-writer on that script. And I think you get a banging ass Superman movie on every account, from the portrayal of the character to just the visual cinematography. You know, James Mangold, Henry Cavill, Jeff Johns. I'm in 100%.
I second that. I like that combo.
Yeah, I feel like
you're right about Logan.
I would. I love Jeff Johns, but the guy's poison for movies.
I think that's hearsay.
I honestly like. I know he had some influence on Wonder Woman, but
he had a lot of influence on Wonder Woman.
He had a lot to do with the third act, from what I'm told, and that was the worst part of Wonder Woman. And I don't know. I would keep Jeff Johns just away from the movies for let him do his Stargirl. He's all happy. Let him do his Stargirl stuff. Just, you know, he's no Kevin Feige. He's at his chance. He's at his opportunities. Just let him sit.
I'll agree with you that he's no Kevin Feige, but I think it's a lot of hearsay. There are a lot of comic book fans, aka the movie normies, that just love pointing fingers at Jeff Johns. Like, from the people that are all about release the Snyder Cut, they're always trying to find reasons to make excuses for Zack Snyder's vision of the DC universe, and it usually falls on Jeff Johns. I don't believe any of that shit, because the movies that Jeff Johns is credited for having more involvement with are the best ones in the DC cinematic universe. Wonder Woman, Aquaman, Shazam, all of which he was more involved with those movies, either as a very hands-on executive producer or even credited as co-writing the screenplay and the script. So that's where I respectfully disagree, and I think this wouldn't be an episode of Let's Talk Comics if Boom and I didn't disagree. So we did it. An hour and 16 minutes in, and we did it.
We almost made it.
We went over an hour agreeing with each other. That's got to be a record, I think.
I know.
So that's two. That's two milestones right there.
It took near 50 episodes to do that. How astounding is that? But yeah, that's where I tend to really toe the line, man, because the movie normies that don't really know anything about Jeff Johns are always looking for excuses to pin the failure of the DC cinematic universe on somebody that's not Zack Snyder. And again,
just back up there. First of all, it's not just normies. There's people in the industry that have a negative opinion of Jeff Johns. I mean, there's recent controversy against Jeff Johns. There's Ray, the guy that plays Cyborg, doesn't have a high opinion of Jeff Johns or Josh Whedon. I mean, I realize, of course, this is all like personal opinion, and and you hear it through through different sources. But I'm just saying that this rumors are coming from the industry. It's not just a bunch of normies. I'm inclined to like Jeff Johns. I'm just saying, I just think he has more success with his TV whenever now I don't actually know the extent to which, and in fact, I don't even think it's clear the extent to which. I don't know exactly what he did for Aquaman, exactly what he did for some of these other movies. I will happily stand to be corrected if he played major roles in those things. I just don't really know what they were, and I don't think it's really been clearly defined. But
yeah. Well, here's the thing, and again, like I credit the fact that he has actually given credits more thoroughly in the movies that have tended to be better in the DC universe. And regarding his controversy, I think one thing to note, and there's multiple things to note. One, a majority of the rest of the cast, whom were also part of the same productions that Jeff Johns and Ray Fisher were in together, most of them are working with Jeff Johns again and are happy to do it. I mean, they just announced a Frosty the Snowman movie where Jason Momoa is going to voice Frosty the Snowman, written by who? Jeff Johns. Jeff Johns is also, again, a big part of Aquaman. I know he is credited, I believe, with like story writing, because obviously it was heavily adapted from his Aquaman run in the New 52, at least visually. And I think he did have involvement in adapting his comic to the screen. But you notice that with all the controversies that have happened in the comic book industry, and I know, Lewis, you might not be as privy to some of these things, you notice that for all the people that went at like Warren Ellis and Cameron Stewart with their kind of experience, nobody is coming out other than Ray Fisher that has had a professional relationship with Jeff Johns and is sort of carrying Ray Fisher's sentiment at all. Like, nobody. I've seen nobody who has had
Yeah.
any sort of relationship with Johns in a professional capacity that is coming out and speaking against him. And again, it goes to show you that a grand majority of those actors who were on the same production as Ray Fisher all are working with Johns again by choice or have nothing but great things to say about it. Even Affleck, who has had some not so kind words for those productions, has always said that Jeff Johns was always in his corner when they were going to make the Batman film. So I don't know. And again,
it's Hollywood. It's Hollywood. People generally don't badmouth each other. And what Ray Fisher said about Joss Whedon was a little bit, considered bad tact. I mean, it wasn't, he should have probably have kept his mouth shut. But I think Ray Fisher is just sort of playing well, let's face it, we're in times now where people of color, his role as Cyborg was cut down by Joss Whedon. And there was significantly more people of color that were going to be in Justice League. His family, Cyborg's family, that was supposed to be another 15 to 20 minutes. The Snyder cut is going to have a lot more Cyborg development. And that's why Ray Fisher was bitter about it. And there was a lot more people of color in it. And that's timely right now, given the current cultural climate in the U.S. So that's why it's taken on a sort of a renewed sense of life, that particular attack on Joss Whedon. And Joss Whedon, let's be clear, his resume speaks for itself. The guy's phenomenally successful. He did Avengers. I mean, he's supported the LGBT community. I mean, he's done all kinds of great stuff. It's just, I'm just saying, like, Hollywood is Hollywood, and there's always love-hate relationships in Hollywood, and people will always swallow their pride when there's millions of dollars at stake.
Well, what I think is worth kind of adding on to that too, and you make very good points that I agree with, is that it could all be a perspective thing. Like he makes, like his main kind of aggression is pointed towards Joss Whedon, referring to Ray Fisher's tweet, and he kind of on the side makes jabs at both John Berg and Jeff Johns, and he says that they were kind of conducive to Joss Whedon's treatment. It could, I think, also just be, like, from his perspective, a little bit of a misunderstanding to how Jeff Johns might have been able to change that. Like, I mean, especially considering how much of a time crunch they were on to refilm like half of that movie, right? How much could Jeff Johns have really done to step in and change that scenario? Because Ray Fisher, I think, might also just have a misunderstanding of what Johns could have done in that position, not only because of the unique circumstances surrounding all of the reshoots of that film specifically, but also the fact of the matter is that Ray Fisher has very few on-screen credits. I don't think he quite knows exactly what goes on behind the curtain of filmmaking. I mean, I'm pretty sure he's more well known for stage drama and maybe only has one or two minor credits on the silver screen prior to Superman. So it could just be him, kind of reminiscing over his bad experience and thinking, oh, the executive producer of this movie didn't stop it. He didn't do anything about it. And maybe that's why, he makes those claims about Johns. And again, it's also worth noting that Johns was clearly not the one that was in the scope, right? It was Joss Whedon. So there are a couple different ways to kind of break that down. As of right now, and I will make this claim 100%, I stand with Jeff Johns. I think that he has certainly built the rapport amongst the fans and amongst other professionals that he's worked with. Obviously, if something comes out that proves any sort of misconduct, I'll condemn him 100%. But as of right now, I'm very much of the mind that you are innocent until proven guilty. I was actually about to make a meme of a kid playing hopscotch, and then I was going to label the kid quote unquote fans of Jeff Johns, and then the square that they're jumping to is conclusions.
Jumping to conclusions. Oh, that's great.
But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. It's certainly such a topical. We're in such a really volatile state. The world is right now. So, it's so hard to say. And it's obviously that is like the least important controversial thing that is going on in the world right now. And so again, for me, yeah, I think we've all had some pretty interesting picks for cinematic Superman. And before we kind of move into the last segment of the conversation, the comics, the source material, I want to gun through a couple of the live comments from some of the lovely folks joining us. Aaron VO says, nah, the best part of Justice League, without question, is the digitally removed mustache. Funny enough, first time I saw that movie, I didn't notice it. I felt like the only person that did not notice the quote-unquote botched removal of his mustache.
Really?
Yeah. I listen, I noticed a bunch of technical flaws about the movie. The mustache was not one of them.
Touche.
Yeah. Tevye Smoko says he likes Henry Cavill as Superman. And Tehillim29 says Cavill or Ralph. And going way back to when Boom was making his statements, Aaron VO says he agrees with Boom. Cavill was one of his favorite Supermans, although he did enjoy Ralph's performance. As for a director, it's a tough question. Honestly, no idea there. It is a very tough question. I mean, there are so many talented filmmakers that I'm sure could step up to that job, and it's important to curate the right filmmaker to be the one to retouch Superman, especially after Zack Snyder's interpretation. Let's see here. Tehillim questions how Nolan would do on Superman. I think at the bare minimum, it would be a thought-provoking Superman movie. He's certainly not like the first choice that would come to mind, but I'm curious just because I feel like this is interesting. How do you guys feel about a Nolan Superman movie?
I'm in.
I would, in fairness to Nolan, when I think of Nolan, I think of Batman and I think of darkness, and I think so. I'm inclined to say no, but in fairness to Nolan, just because he does Batman Dark doesn't mean that he would do Superman the same way, right? That's why I find this such a difficult exercise picking directors. Just because I may not have liked the director's vision of one movie, that doesn't mean they wouldn't do a fantastic Superman movie. You know what I mean? It all comes down to how they think of the character. Maybe Nolan has always thought of Superman the way we've been talking about him, for all we know. And it would be a very light, bright, Avatar Messiah-like movie of a super good man who is an example for humanity and encapsulate everything we're talking about, for all I know. But because Superman, let's face it, Superman is a very different character than Batman. But when I think of Nolan, I just can't get his Batman movie out of my head. And it was a great Batman, great trilogy of Batman movies. But I just can't see him on Superman. But I would stand to be corrected, obviously.
Yeah, I would. I'm kind of in the same camp. It's hard to consider. It's hard to think about. But given Nolan's resume, if you said Nolan was directing a Superman movie, am I not going to be okay with that? I mean, he's one of the best directors currently in the industry. So it's hard to say. Let's see. Tehillim agrees with, I think, what Lewis had mentioned too. He would like to see either Patty Jenkins or James Wan direct a Superman film. Let's see. Just letting you guys know, I'm going to start kind of skipping through some of the comments so we can catch up and then go into the comic book conversation. Aaron VO says he was just telling his girl he loves the way the chats go beyond the story. I think referring to Let's Talk Comics, but how they reflect reality. I love how deep you guys go into the subtext. I appreciate that, man. That is music to my ears. That is 100% what we always try to do with Let's Talk Comics, and I'm so glad that it resonates with you. And thank you, man. It's very kind. It really does put a smile on my face to hear that. So that's also a testament to the gentleman here beside me having the conversation. So all credit due to them.
Thank you, sir.
Let's see. Tehillim29 says that John's might be better for smaller project movies or series. Maybe. It's really hard to kind of put a finger on that pulse because it's not like it's a super transparent industry. You know what I mean? So it is what it is. Aaron VO says he needs 2 words to defend Jeff Johns. Blackest Night, one of his favorite stories he's ever read. If you are going to defend Jeff Johns in 2 words, I don't blame you for using those 2 because they are a phenomenal series of words.
It's a great
missed opportunity. Only missed opportunity in Blackest Night was making Superman the new Hope Guardian. That was the only missed opportunity. And
fair.
Who was Hope?
Barry Allen.
Day. Yeah,
Barry Allen.
Barry Allen, right.
To this point, I'm like, to this day, but it's okay. I guess they needed him for the connection to Bruce, whatever. That's another conversation.
Yeah. Listen, Blackest Night, for those of you who haven't read it, a top 5
Dude,
comic book.
let's do it. let's do a Let's Talk Comics just about Blackest Night right now. Calling it. Let's make it a next episode. Not right now, but I mean let's make it happen.
I'm game, man. I'm totally game.
My favorite part of Blackest Night, my favorite crossover Blackest Night, when they brought Jonah Hex back, and one of my favorite scenes in Death Metal number one is that they brought Jonah Hex back again. Yeah. At the cemetery. I love that because I love Jonah Hex. But I do think it is about time. He's probably going to get rid of his Confederate uniform because of the current cultural climate. I have a feeling they're going to be revamping Jonah Hex at some point, because he always wore that Confederate uniform as almost like a protest against it. He wore it for reasons that had nothing to do with slavery. So I think that they're going to probably, I think Jonah Hex is a character, and this is another topic for another day, that they're going to have to probably refigure that character or revamp that character a bit to make it more, because Jonah Hex deserves better than maybe being kept in that Confederate category the way the current cultural climate's going. So
yeah,
I digress.
Yeah. No, I feel you, but definitely I think Blackest Night is very much something that we could talk about. For those of you watching either live or on VOD, let us know down below. Would you be in on a Let's Talk Comics completely on Blackest Night? Because I feel like that would be a great discussion to obviously have these two back for.
Yes,
so let us know.
Yes, we want it.
Aaron B.O. says, wait, what? Frosty the Momoa? Did I just have Mandarin? Yeah, that's valid.
Hey, bro, I'm melting.
When I saw Frosty, I was like, Frozen Aquaman. What are we doing?
Was it my man? My man.
Yeah.
Yo, I can just imagine, in the old Frosty movies where like he just kind of appears behind like the little kid and like taps him on the shoulder, and the kid like turns around, looks at him and faints. And he just turns around, my man, faints. That'd be too good of a reference not to include. It's like having Samuel L. Jackson and not having him call somebody a motherfucker. Like, you can't do that. Paul Baker says the Shazam movie was literally just his New 52 run, but on a screen. Yeah, and listen, pretty much. If you go back to like, I think I did a review of Shazam. I did something on Shazam movie. I literally mentioned, I did like a non-spoiler reaction. I was like, this somehow defies the limitations of a comic book and puts it on film, because usually I'm a proponent of different mediums. There are different advantages, right? And Shazam was very much comic books just distilled onto a fucking screen, and it was magnificent. I don't know. I mean, at times it was a little bit playful, maybe even a little bit campy, but I thought it worked, man. What about you guys?
I enjoy Shazam a lot, and also he's a kid. It made sense. Like all the little campiness, I think, like the little like immatureness of some whatever. I loved it. I enjoyed Shazam a lot.
Yeah,
I really did.
Yeah, I agree. Shazam is a good movie. Honestly, I gave it very positive reviews. In hindsight, if I was nitpicking it, I really would have. I thought they advertised it wrong. I think they should have marketed it. They should have focused a little bit more on the Shazam family aspect, in my view, because my favorite part of the movie were all his kids, all his orphan friends, and they all got powers. I would have loved to have seen more action with all of them, although I admit that I know it's just the first Shazam movie, but I hope in subsequent movies they focus more on the Shazam family aspect, where they.
Dude, I agree.
Yeah, because I really think, especially now because it's such a diverse family. So it's relevant. It's culturally relevant. It's awesome. I mean, it's just well written. They're just really cool characters, and I think I got to tell you, like I think a Shazam sequel would outperform the original Shazam, especially now. I think the time is right for it.
I agree.
Yeah,
dude, I remember when I saw Mary Marvel, I was like, oh, she's one of like my superhero crushes. So I was like, oh.
It was like a total like nerdgasm on screen.
Yeah.
And I remember too, I specifically remember Boom, just before that movie was coming out, or maybe even like just as it came out, he was like, this movie's going to break $1 billion. And I was like, I hope so. And then it just not.
That was my prediction. I was very wrong. It didn't, but I don't know what it did. It do 600 million or
it didn't do that well. It really like I think it's somewhere in between, and I know this is a pretty big gap, somewhere between 400 and 600 million, which I think the movie barely made a profit, but because of the critical reception, that's what made them say, okay, we'll do a part 2, and it'll likely make more money than the first. So, I mean, I can't wait for Shazam 2. Shazam, I loved Shazam.
Dude,
it was so much fun.
I'm excited about The Rock.
I know, Black fucking Adam. Oh,
dude, that's gonna be
good.
Amazing. I just hope we get to see his country. I hope we get to see something amazing. I don't know if it's gonna be like an origin story. He's gonna just follow up. Whatever it is, I'm in. Whatever it is.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, seeing Kondak on screen would be dope.
Thank you. It completely escaped my mind the name.
All good, bro. Paul Baker says Nolan was a big producer on Man of Steel, and a whole lot of that vision was laid down by him, more so than Snyder. So personally, nah, I'm good. That's fair, man. That's interesting. I knew he had executive produced it. I didn't know how involved he was in the film. I figured it was just kind of one of those things that he was a producer in name only because The Dark Knight was so successful. So that's interesting to hear. Tevye Smoka regarding Darker says, what about Brad Bird? Can he do Superman? You might have missed it, my friend. Brad Bird was the first name that I dropped. So yes, I 100% agree with you. And if you missed it, I recommend you rewinding the video a little bit after we go off live, because I spoke volumes about Brad Bird, man. I think he would be a phenomenal director for Superman. AKA, I agree with your pick. Let's see. Tevye Smoka also says, how about a Super Sons movie with Jonathan Samuel Kent, Superboy, and Damian Wayne Robin being great friends? Sure. Would it do phenomenally at the box office? I'm not so sure. But as a fan, would I love to see it? Of course. Absolutely. 100%.
I see them having like a Titans appearance before we see a movie, to be honest.
Oh, yeah.
For those characters. Sure. But it would be like, I'll watch it.
I think if anything, we might see an animated feature sometime in the next 5 to 10 years on the Super Sons.
Yeah.
Live action, just being kind of logical, I don't think so.
Yeah. I want to suggest something, just backtracking a bit here, that part of my reluctance about a Black Adam movie is the fact that I'm so excited about it. And what I mean by that is I'm so excited about a Black Adam movie because, and I hate to say this, and I know I'm going to be a hypocrite by saying this given our discussion, but it's because Black Adam is kind of a dark Superman. He's a really anti-hero. And my fear is that if it's a really popular movie and it's so cool because he gets to kill and he's going to be aggressive and he's going to build on the aggression that's already existing in the current cultural climate on the planet, on this earth right now, and he's going to be vengeful and he was an autocrat. I mean, Black Adam's origin, he's kind of a dictator. He's kind of a jerk. He's not exactly a hero by any stretch of the imagination. He's an autocrat and he's got superpowers. And if he does a movie and it's written like that and it's successful and people love this character, will we ever get a popular Superman movie? How do you go from loving Black Adam to loving somebody as pure as Superman? That concerns me a bit. And maybe I'm being too worrisome about it. But when they talk about putting Superman in the Black Adam movie, I think that would be an interesting juxtaposition of complete opposites. And I think it would be very, very important to make sure Superman shines in that movie, and in a good way. In much the same way as Superman shone in the comic book, Whatever Happened to Truth, Justice, and the American Way, how Superman showed up the elite. I would want to see some of that when he's fighting Black Adam, saying, look, you don't have to be an asshole and be a hero.
Yeah.
Like, that's my concern.
They're going to be towing a very, very fine line if you're going to have those two characters interact. And I hope you're right. I really hope it does just function as a really strong juxtaposition. And we do know that Black Adam is kind of going to be almost like a gray hero, an anti-hero. So I wonder if he might base his sort of more positive ideals maybe off of his interaction with Superman. Who knows?
Maybe.
But for what people usually follow me for, we will now be kind of segueing into Superman in the comics. And obviously we would be remiss not to talk about the current Superman. And what better person than to complain about Bendis' Superman than my pal, Comic Boom? So obviously by the title, I think we can pretty much agree. And I don't know how far you've gotten into Bendis' Superman at all, Lewis, but it's pretty clear that Bendis' Superman does not resonate with the character, his mythos, his world. Boom. Would you do me the honor of starting off this conversation?
Why Bendis' Superman doesn't resonate with his mythos? Well, first, why don't I do something different? Because I've bitched about Bendis' Superman enough. I know why Bendis thinks his Superman does resonate with the mythology. And let's start off. Let me try sounding like Bendis does in interviews when he talks about Superman. Okay,
sure.
And I'm gonna try to do him some justice here, and because this is Bendis' thesis, and I want to be clear here. What's so fascinating about Bendis' Superman is that, in my view, when you read his Superman, you get a different version of Superman when you actually look at what the character is doing in the story of the comic itself versus what it actually tells you about how Bendis thinks of Superman. Clearly, Bendis thinks of Superman as a very pure, white bread, a very, very good person. Clark Kent is a very nice guy. Superman is a very nice guy. Superman loves his wife. Superman does whatever his wife tells him all the time. He doesn't stand up to Lois. He respects Lois. Lois gets to be, Lois wears the pants in the family. Lois calls the shots. Superman, he's always giving in. Superman, he didn't fight for his son. He didn't seem to complain about losing 7 years of his son's life. He didn't complain about his son going into the 31st century. He just gives lip service to it. This is where I think Bendis crossed a Rubicon that I think has pissed off fans, especially like me, is that he wants Superman to be so nice and so accepting of everything that he doesn't let Superman stand up for himself once in a while. Like, where's Superman's emotion? Where is Superman's emotion? Where's the man in Superman about losing 7 years of his son's life? Where's that moment, John, where he says, "Where's my boy?" Where is that? How can you not write a scene like that? Especially if you're Bendis and all you know how to write is a bunch of dialogue, and you miss an opportunity like that. What are you doing? Like, to
be fair, Bendis hasn't written good dialogue in like half a decade. Continue, but I just wanted to kind of put that qualifying statement out there.
Well, but he can when he puts his mind to it, and I'm giving him the benefit of the doubt here. And in any event, I feel that he's out of his quest and his zeal to want to create the Legion of Superheroes. He breezed over the Rogozar storyline. He doubled down on Jor-El, the father figure of Superman, being a complete dick, and then sentencing him to go back to Krypton to die as it exploded. To aging up John Kent just to get him to the Legion of Superheroes. And all for what? Superman doesn't even inspire the United Planets. His son does. Well, and Superman sits back and is complacent. And he's like, what is Superman? He's lost his family. Now he just has his wife, Lois. She pretty much lives in an apartment in Chicago. He's in Metropolis. They barely spend any time together. I really think that, as a way, I think he's gone out of his way that I can't relate to Superman anymore. This might sound shocking, but am I in the minority that I actually have a wife and I have a child that I love, that I want to spend time with, that I have some, like, he's trying to drown Superman in so much angst and uniqueness, and he's lost the character. I can't relate to this guy anymore. This guy doesn't have a spine. Superman needs a backbone and he doesn't have it anymore.
Yeah, I mean, there's a very distinct, again, line that Superman walks where, he's the kindest of us all, but his backbone is there. You look at him, I was, again, just reading Superman for All Seasons, and I forget what it was where it's the first time he physically encounters Lex Luthor after, like, literally just taking a submerged hostile submarine and dropping it on a military base, like in front of Luthor, and Luthor's bitching and moaning, and he just puts his hand out in front of him, puts his arm around Lois Lane, and zips off. And it's a fundamental misunderstanding that Superman has his fingers on a just a good social pulse. He knows when to stand his ground, and that's just as important as knowing, you know, when to be compassionate, when to be humble and modest, right? So you make an excellent point. And, you know, the failure of Bendis' Superman goes, you know, beyond and into a number of very fundamental misunderstandings that he has shown in his run. But the fact of the matter is that via the Peter Tomasi and Patrick Gleason Superman run, we were entering a new age for Superman, right? Like this Superman Rebirth, the much beloved run, was defined by Superman and fatherhood, right? Like and for all of the people that talk about Superman's unrelatability and why he's difficult to write and why he lacks that longevity, that was your answer. How do you do something new with Superman? You put him in the same position that Jonathan and Martha Kent were in, except he knows he not only has to live up to being Superman, he has to live up to being Jonathan and Martha Kent. And what happens? What kind of anxieties does that bring, right? He's trying to raise essentially a young demigod and be Superman and be Clark Kent and be a husband. There's so much to that. And Bendis, like, we didn't even let that sort of dynamic peak, right? We were still rising up into the climax of that narrative, and Bendis just drops it like a fucking, like a bowling ball. And that's what's so frustrating. And it's not like he went off and did something that was at least complimentary to Superman. He went off from what could have been one of the greatest eras of Superman ever, and totally shits all over the character and his mythos. And that's such a problem. That's such an issue. But, you know, to each their own. And I really hope that whoever comes after him, Tom Taylor, maybe, please. You know, I hope that he rights those wrongs. I know there's two gentlemen in particular in the chat, Tevye and Tehillim, that obviously have some choice words for Brian Michael Bendis. But you know, and it's funny that Paul Baker, I put this comment up and forgot to read it. Bendis be like, Clark and Lois are married and have a kid? Sounds kind of gay. Yeah, you pretty much get it. I mean, again, aside from the fact that he's kind of butchering aspects of Superman, he's also butchering Superman's supporting cast of characters, which is like one of the most lively parts of his mythos, right? Like when you think Superman, it's not just Superman. It's Superman. His dual identity is Clark. It's Lois Lane. It's Jimmy Olsen. It's Perry White. It's even fucking Lombard. Like all of them are so fresh and vibrant and a big part of the mythos. And again, Ma and Pa Kent. And then you just shit on it. It's so frustrating. But Lewis, I know that you're kind of in and out of current comics. Did you get to kind of bite into the Rebirth Superman? Have you gotten to try Bendis's? And what are your kind of overall thoughts between the two, if you have or have not gotten into them?
I have not read his stuff yet, unfortunately. I have seen your past complaints about it, same about Booms, and I've read here and there a couple of things. Just because I don't want to be completely left out.
Save your money. Save your money.
That's basically what I'm getting here. And I mean, I'm still trying to get over the whole Rick Grayson thing, but that's another topic. And now, so you're telling me that it was John Kent who inspired the Legion to look out for to like have Superman as their
That's right,
dude.
It's the son of Superman who inspired the Legion of Super. It's not Superman is no longer the inspiration for the Legion of Superheroes. It was in fact young John Kent who came up with the idea of the United Planets at the end of the Rogolzar storyline. He came up with the idea, and that's why. And the Legion of Superheroes came back to invite John Kent, who was the founder and the creator of the United Planets, to come and join them in the 31st century. And that was the entire run. That Bendis' entire year was geared toward building toward the Legion of Superheroes. That's what it was all about for Bendis. It was the Legion of Superheroes is Bendis's magnum opus for the DC universe. It was all the Man of Steel through the Year of Rogolzar. That was all building for the express purpose of putting John Kent into the 31st century. That's what it was all about. That's why they aged him up, and nobody wanted to age him up but Bendis. So it wasn't a collaborative. It was not a collaborative decision. It was a
So
unilateral.
you're telling me that it's a good thing that I haven't been reading Superman then?
100%. Listen,
Thank you. Okay, that's what it is to know.
where I'm putting my foot down. Okay, I was the guy 2, maybe 3 issues in to Bendis's Man of Steel saying, this is gonna fucking suck. And everybody was like, give him a chance. Oh, listen, mind you, I was one of the people that when Bendis came to DC, I was the one shutting down the naysayers and saying, maybe this will be a breath of fresh air. Maybe this will re-inspire him creatively, right? I gave him a chance. And I positively reviewed the first issue of Man of Steel. All downhill from there. But if I can give you any advice, it is to heed my warning, both now and from 2 years ago, when I said Bendis' Superman at the time was and now is an absolute fucking train wreck on every account. I might be.
The art is fantastic. The art is fantastic.
Art's great. Very, very good. Bendis somehow manages to coerce some of the best artists in comics to draw some of the worst Superman stories we have seen ever. And it's kind of a fucking shame. But, you know, this is where I think I will start staking my claim as like the Simpsons of comic book predictors. You know how the Simpsons just has this uncanny ability to predict like these events in the world? That's me with comics. Bendis' Man of Steel, trash. King's Superman, trash. Snyder's Death Metal and Justice League, trash. I feel like I'm missing one. I'm missing at least one. But all of those things early on, I was like, this is going to suck. And then everybody's like, no, it's great. And then as time goes on, everybody's like, oh, you're kind of right. I was like, I know.
The hair flip.
But yeah, aside from that diatribe, man, did you get a chance to read like any of Superman Rebirth, like any of the John Kent?
Yes, I know John Kent. I know the whole New 52 Superman and Rebirth Superman fusing back together. All of that I saw. I read that. I actually got the trades. I didn't get the single issues, unfortunately. But yes, I have read quite a few of it, and but I'm not caught up with a whole bunch of issues, to be honest, because I've had to like stop reading a whole bunch of stuff for other reasons. Mainly, I've just been trying to save, and reading comic books is getting expensive every day.
You're not wrong. You're not wrong.
So it comes down to, do I put $10 gas in my car this week, or do I get 2 comic books? You know, so it's like I have to get to work. So I kind of my pull list that has been like 20 comic books has gone down to 3. You know, and a lot of times I've been reading indies. I've been reading a lot of Aftershock comics, and because they're really good. They're doing a really good job. And I also started reading Nightwing. Like my 2 main dudes are Superman and Nightwing on DC. And then I stopped reading Nightwing, I want to say mid-Rebirth, maybe a few issues in. I don't know. Before he got shot. Way before he got shot. And that whole thing going on. But I read about it online because I was like, let me see what's going on with Dick. And then Wikipedia was like, you mean Rick? And I was like, what?
Courtesy of everyone's favorite Batman writer, Tom King.
Dude, and I looked into it, and I was so disgusted that I have not picked up a Nightwing comic book ever since. Like, I pushed through Grayson very, very tightly. I pushed through Grayson, you know? Like, they did my boy dirty and Forever Evil as it is. And I was like, okay, fine, let me live with this. Then Grayson came out, and I was like, oh my God, the wound is getting deeper. And then I read a little into Rebirth, and then I saw what they were doing, and then I stopped because, again, I had to pick and choose what I read. And then I read what they did with him and how he now goes by Rick and the whole bullet and everything to the head. And I was just like, wow, it's like they're just flipping a coin. It's like heads, he dies, tails, he loses his memory and only remembers that he's Rick instead of Dick. You know, it's like, I don't know, man. They need to freshen up their shit. It's crazy.
Listen, Boom and I think myself, maybe even slightly more, have been incredibly critical of DC these last 2 years.
Yeah.
And and I'm not going to speak for Boom here. I would say the unadulterated butchering of some of their most important characters, but hey, fucking sue me. You know, it's rough. It is rough. And I'm hoping we start to see some of those tides kind of shift. And what's interesting here is that Paul Baker says that Bendis has said that a lot of his pre-reading was Gold and Silver and Bronze Age, 80 Superman books, and he thinks that partially explains some of his characterization of the supporting cast, which is like...
He's going to have Superman use super ventriloquism, isn't he?
Yeah, like, are we going to have tiny Supermans coming out of his fingers? Is that a thing?
Or he's going to be a hobo for a day.
Yeah, let me, like, quick side tangent. I hate when fans and creators suddenly think that it is okay to use either like Golden and Silver Age as either a bit of continuity without restructuring it. Of course, everybody knows my adamant love for the way Grant Morrison plays with old continuity. Or they use that as an example of characterization, because it's like, if you gave me the option of driving a 2020 Lamborghini Murcielago or the original steam engine locomotive, which do you think I'm going to choose? Is that even a question? Like, is that a question? I never get that. I never understand that mentality that like we have to go way back to the past, you know, because they seem to conveniently forget that back then, Superman's initial appearance, he was kind of a douchebag, and Batman was a murderer who hung people off of the Batplane. So let's just put all of that out in the open there, and also kind of forget the fact that comics have totally evolved, especially in the last 25 to 30 years, as to what they're capable of doing and what we're aware of them being capable of doing. But hey, nobody asked for my rant, but there it was. I had to get that out there.
Yeah, I mean, that's why, like, even like Elseworld stories I've been more into, like The Seas. I was so into that. Like The Seas, I was hooked, you know? And honestly, it comes to the point, like, after I read everything that's been going on, I'd rather go for an Elseworld story than to see what's going on in the canon world, because, yeah. And they already did dirty two of my favorite characters, and I'm afraid. I don't know what's next. I'm not going to say who my other favorite character is, but then they'll ruin them too. Or her. Or it. You know, it's
Nightwing is definitely, well, hopefully out of Joker War, Nightwing is probably going to go back to normal, but it's right now Nightwing is controlled by the Joker in Joker War, because the Joker has a vial that actually controls Nightwing's mind. So that's leading in a Joker War. So at some point, I'm sure that's some brainwashing is going to have to be overcome by.
I mean, three Jokers is probably what's going to get me back in.
I'm so excited.
Yeah.
I
know, me too.
It feels so good.
I'm freaking out.
It feels so good to be excited for a fucking DC comic. I need to get that, because I know I've been incredibly pessimistic about DC Comics, especially like these last 2 years. But holy fucking shit, is it a delight and a breath of fresh air to be absolutely mind-bogglingly excited for a DC comic. I can't wait. I can't fucking wait. And what's interesting,
in fairness though, I like Batman, I like Aquaman, I love Suicide Squad, Tom Taylor, that's hitting it out of the park. I think Deadshot's going to be killed in issue 9. That's really exciting. I've been enjoying Hawkman, Justice League Odyssey. I'm liking Death Metal. I think it's going somewhere. I mean, so it's not all darkness. I don't want to say it's all doom and gloom here. Dark Knight.
I don't know. I think I'm seeing a little bit of
in your throat.
I might be seeing a little bit of maybe a rosy complexion in those glasses of yours. I don't know. Listen, without sounding incredibly optimistic, DC does have a handful of pretty good books that are coming out, and I won't deny that. But 3 Jokers, though, just the amount of excitement.
Well, sure.
For that, you know what I mean? Just like such a high-profile book.
Hell yeah! Like, I want to make a reservation to talk with you guys when that comes out for sure.
Listen, 3 Jokers, the 3 of us. I'm in. I'm here for it.
Heck yeah.
And And to be fair, man, like that was, it also holds like a special place for me because when I started really doing the comic book stuff and I had gotten into some sort of relationship with DC's PR department, I had gotten the press pass to be literally front row. For those of you that didn't watch it, I recorded a good majority of it, of Jeff Johns and Jason Fabok talking about Three Jokers, and they were showing the art and discussing the creative process. I'm just mind-bogglingly excited for that book. So that's definitely something that we'll have to talk about. And regarding the Nightwing thing, oh, that's the wrong one. I knew Paul Baker. There it is. He had said, yeah, he says that Dan Abnett had come out and said that King basically told everybody he was going to have Nightwing get shot at basically the last minute possible and threw it in a lot of other books and threw a lot of other books out of whack.
That's a big move.
You see his face? This is the face.
No pun intended.
This is the face of a man who is not surprised at all.
That was a Rick move.
He did it. He did it.
But I'm
also, Aaron VO also says, I'm so sorry to be that guy, but there was no 2020 Murcielago. Internet 1, DarkKnightNation 0. I'll give it to you. I'll give it to you. But yeah, man, I mean, just fundamentally just kind of going back into Superman in the comics, I think that, first of all, just considering how Bendis has butchered Superman, we need a return to form generally, right? Like we need to get a sense of the Superman that we've been discussing, the Superman that we've been talking and singing its praises of this entire conversation. We need that in a very general sense. But I also think and I'm sure there's a number of folks in the chat and who are obviously, and you two here who will agree with me, is that I think we need to return back to Superman being a dad, because it's just such an unprecedented opportunity to tell Superman stories, and to take that character in a new direction that feels not, I don't want to say beholden to the character, but definitely values his mythos and his characterization while also treading new ground. So I have a two-part question to kind of close out the conversation for the two of you joining me and obviously everybody watching. What do you want coming out of a Superman story post Bendis? If they said Bendis, yeet, you're out of here. Comic Boom, Geek Fortress, you get to pick the next direction for Superman. Who's writing? Who's drawing it? What are your choices? And what's the kind of narrative that you want to see? Be as vague or as detailed as you feel. And obviously, everybody who's watching, feel free to join in answering that question with your thoughts below. But I think we'll start with my pal Comic Boom here. What are you thinking? What's your direction for Superman?
I would. I know this is a cliche because we've talked about it before. He's such a go-to writer, but I mean, Tom Taylor. I'd want 12 issues of Tom Taylor, and if I would give Bendis a directive, I would have Death Metal end with Perpetua with being defeated and the multiverse being reformed. And the one significant change with that, the final page of Death Metal would be Superman reunited with a 10-year-old John Kent. Mm-hmm. And I think it's a very simple fix. It's a very simple fix. You can easily have a 10-year-old John Kent in the present and still have John Kent as a 17-year-old in the 31st century. Why can't you have both? They're different time period. You could easily have both, and I would have both, and I would have a little bit of mystery. Then people can wonder how I mean, I wouldn't even care, but I would focus on return the 10-year-old to Superman, reward him to Lois. I would create that family unit back, and it would be an obvious repudiation of that aspect of what Bendis was trying to do, but he'd still have his Legion of Superheroes and a 17-year-old Superboy. He'd still have that. And then the mystery would be, and then I think it would even add mystery to the 31st century. Imagine a Superboy, John Kent, 17 years old in the 31st century, and he's experienced 7 years of his life that we don't know what happened to him because we only know the 10-year-old in the present. I think it would mystery. I think it would create story potential, and I think it would be an interesting angle. They should have done that in the first place. I would force that to happen. And I would just say, you're doing it. And then I would give it to Tom Taylor and say, write whatever you want, because I trust Tom Taylor. He's got an instinct for the character.
Yeah, I agree. And you make a lot of sense. And the more that you talk about it, I mean, you'll still never get me inclined enough to read death metal or buy it for that matter. But I like that. I like that trajectory. At least we could get something positive out of death metal. I'm curious though, too. Do you have a potential artist in mind, or do you want to give it a minute and maybe let Lewis answer and come up with an artist, unless you have one?
Go to Lewis. I'd have to think about that.
Okay, so Lewis, again, two-part question.
So I would have to agree with Tom Taylor. Just 'cause after reading The Seas, that's the book that is the freshest in my mind. So I think he does a great job. He knows the characters. Like the way he wrote Superman in that book was just amazing, and I think he does a really good job of keeping you on your toes. And I think that we need more of that. Like we need more of what's going to happen next, kind of thing. And as far as the artist, I don't think it's going to happen because now he's got bigger things. But this beautiful soul right here, he is my favorite artist. I actually got this portfolio thing. And hopefully when I see him again someday, I don't know when that's going to happen, he can sign a couple of those. I also do like the guy who also did Deceased in the first couple of issues. I like his art, and I'm forgetting his name.
Trevor Hairsine?
Trevor Hairsine, thank you. He's really good. I like his art. As far as the direction that I want them to take with the character, just because I'm not really, I mean, other than what you guys have told me, I would have to agree with kind of bring that fatherhood aspect as well, because the little that I read, I enjoyed. Like you mentioned it before, Dark Knight, seeing Superman now having to go through the struggle of having to raise a mini demigod, like you said it, it's something that now he's like, holy crap, this is what my mom and dad went through. It's kind of like completing the circle kind of thing, and I think that's very poetic. And it's great. It's great to see something like that happen. And at the end of the day, there's only so much, like you said, that you can do with the comic books. But I think you can definitely keep the ideas fresh. I would love to see some sort of book with Superman and John Constantine. I don't know how. I don't know when. I don't know where. But I want to see it just because they're completely two sides of spectrum. And I just want to see Constantine's Dickness go up against Superman's qualities and morals and everything, and maybe him like having to, I don't know, I don't want to say like a versus, but something. And I would also see like another story with like Martian Manhunter and Superman. Yeah, because I feel like we don't have enough of those two alien aspects. Yeah, I feel like that would be something amazing. And I don't know, something like that. I like when they think outside the picture. That's what grabs me in a comic book. I like when like Blackest Night, when Blackest Night came out, and we go back to Blackest Night. Yeah, zombies had been a thing already. The Walking Dead was out, but the way that they did it, it wasn't a zombie. It was a Black Lantern that.
But space zombies. Now that was a thing.
Exactly. And up to like the last issue, I was like, how are they going to get out of this? How?
Yeah. They did build up the stakes really well.
Yeah. Like, it's that edge of your seed factor that I miss, and that's something that I really enjoy. That's the comic books that I'm used to reading. That's the stuff that I love, that I enjoy. Think outside the box, do something different. And you can even do the parenthood aspect in an outside the box type of situation. Like, who knows? Maybe someday Superman will have to choose between Lois and Jonathan. Who knows? Something like that.
It'd be interesting. And it's funny because you mentioned two kind of offhand things, and they're not necessarily my picks. But the more I think about it, the more that I have pitches for both a Superman Martian Manhunter story now and a Superman John Constantine. Tell me this wouldn't be good. A Superman John Constantine one shot where it's that tropey thing where they get chained together, and obviously Superman can't stop magic.
Yep.
But John Constantine is too drunk to dispel the chain, and it's just a slice of life, them doing Superman things, them doing John Constantine things, and those two like playing off of each other for like an oversized one shot.
I'm in.
I'll write
See
it.
what I
Don't
mean?
worry.
Or even like a Freaky Friday. Imagine John Constantine being trapped in Superman's body and Superman being trapped with John Constantine's body, and they had to solve and Superman had to fight demons, and he's and he doesn't know how to defeat a demon, and then John Constantine trying to do right as Superman, and I think that would be kind of a, it's a kind of a trope, but it would be kind of a fun. I think that would be a fun shot.
And then when he's in Superman's body, he's gonna try to put on the American accent rather than the British accent. So he's gonna be like extra. I mean, I don't know how you portray that in a comic book, but in my mind, I would read him with a British accent, and then he'd be like, "Oh, wait, I cannot be British," and then he'll try to switch, and then he'll be like,
"I need smoke."
And they say extra about it.
Yeah,
exactly.
Doesn't have to worry about getting.
And then he says a line like, "Wait, I have super lungs. What the hell?" And then he just smokes like every panel.
Imagine a panel, right? Imagine, oh my God, a full page splash. You guys know that Jason Fabok image of Superman just floating and like the clouds are parting and there's a dove on his shoulder and he's just looking very messianic. Instead, it's Superman like kind of lounging back but floating with a cigarette in his mouth. Like that would be too good.
Well, if by any chance DC comes out with that story, you heard it here first. We came up with it. There you go.
Listen, DC, I'll write either of those stories. Don't worry, I work cheap. Also,
this man.
When you brought up the Martian Manhunter thing, you know what I think would be brilliant is doing something that is deeply involved in parenthood, because J'onn J'onzz lost his daughter. His daughter died on Mars. Yep. And imagine what type of really personal conversation you could get out of Superman and J'onn J'onzz, and J'onn kind of giving Superman some fatherly advice, because there's a lot of kinship between those two characters. That I think people often recognize them as aliens and obviously being almost omnipotent, but also like nobody talks about how they were both fathers, right? And the kind of tragedy of J'onn J'onzz losing his daughter and Superman, just now kind of rearing and raising his son. So I feel like that would be a really, really interesting story. But
for men, they have something in common. They have something in common because they both lost their young kids. Superman lost John. He lost his son's youth. So there was a death, like he lost an entire segment of his son's life. And I still say that he hasn't dealt with that yet. I don't care what anybody says. If my 5-year-old daughter suddenly showed up and she's 20 years old, I would cry. I mean, I'd be happy to see her.
It's funny because I'm not a father yet, but when I saw that in Ant-Man, when he came back after being stuck for 5 years and he saw his daughter growing up, my first thought was like, oh my God, he missed his daughter's childhood. And I'm not even a father yet. And that's one of the first things that came to my mind. So it's funny that you mentioned that. I agree 100%.
Yeah. No, it would be an interesting story. And I think Boom's addition there and actually taking the garbage that is Bendis' Superman and turning it into something that has
a good redemption arc.
Yeah, and it provides another level of drama. But without further ado, my idea for Superman is action. I think Boom might be a little bit surprised. I have a pick for Superman and Action Comics in the kind of direction of both. Superman is the parental book. It's the fatherly book. And apropos of his recent work and of him now having 3 boys, I would actually put Scott Snyder on Superman. I think that's more the direction of what he has tonally kind of been writing these last couple of years. I think apropos of that Superman issue or Justice League issue 25 with, his understanding of Superman's symbolism and what he represents. I think that he would do a pretty good Superman story. I'd like to have enough faith in him at this point. So I would actually give him Superman. And I mean, I would be remiss not to say Jorge Jimenez draw that arc. But that's kind of the fatherly book. And I would actually, again, really almost explicitly have Superman discuss trying to measure up to the parental ability of Jonathan and Martha Kent, because although I feel like it's always going to be there, I feel like that is a big thing, and it's even more humbling for God, essentially God, to try to measure up to the simplest of humans, right? Just these farm folk out in the middle of Kansas. And there's a lot you could do there. And I think Scott, especially being a father of 3 boys, just had another kid. I feel like that type of thing could really resonate him. And my action comics would be Tom Taylor. And I would make it very topical, and I would pretty much have the story be about compromise and restraint and how we live in a world where discourse becomes impossible, and people are jumping to conclusions and jumping down each other's throats for thinking different. And you know, Superman kind of understanding the hypocrisy of that and being the mediator, right? Superman being the one to say, you're both wrong. We're all human. We all need to sit down and understand each other. You know what I mean? We all need to take that slice of Superman perception and act towards each other with that perception in mind. And my artist would actually be Andy Kubert. I think Andy Kubert draws a great Superman. And again, you know, Boom brought up Kings Up in the Sky. I love his Superman. It's really classic, but he's one of those few older artists that still has a lot of life to the art. It's not super stiff. There's a lot of really great kind of technical things he can still pull off while also doing the big iconic, you know, bodybuilder looking Superman. So yeah, that's kind of the direction for my Superman. And the cool thing is you could have a little bit of interplay in the Superman book where it's like, oh, like Clark is not only, you know, having the difficulty raising his kid, measuring up to Jonathan and Martha Kent, but he's doing it in this current kind of political and social climate that we're seeing in Action Comics. So you can have a little bit of interplay there. And don't worry, DC, if you don't want to pay Scott or Tom to write either of those books, I'm here. Don't worry. I'll do it. I'll do it much cheaper than they will. So yeah, that's kind of my idea for the trajectory, a potential trajectory of Superman.
Yeah.
I like it.
And Bruno Redondo, the artist, he's the current artist on Suicide Squad, would be my artist.
Interesting. I think that's a good choice. He's very emotive, which is really cool.
Yeah,
he's a very emotive
artist. I think that's what Superman needs. I want to end. It's 2 hours and 17 minutes we're going here, so I got to go. So I don't know how long we'll talk, but I just want to end. I just want to end by saying this. There's a great with one of my favorite Superman scenes in a story was at the end of Superman Beyond issue 2, which deals with the story of Final Crisis, where Superman is fighting like a monster monitor who basically eats up narratives. He eats up stories. And Final Crisis was, I'm going to oversimplify it. It was basically about this malevolent force that was eating up the various stories. It was very meta. It was eating up the various stories of all the different Earths. And as all our stories are unique. And so as all the stories evolve on different Earths, the monitors take different shapes because everybody has a different story. So you look differently because your stories are different. And Superman defeats this vampire monitor that's eating up all the stories. And at the end, on the final page of Superman Beyond #2, you think that Superman is gone. He's dead, and it shows a gravestone. And it's typical perfect Grant Morrison, and you think Superman's gone and dead, and it shows the gravestone, and written on the gravestone is "to be continued."
Oh, that's great.
Perfect. And it embodies Superman because he's always around, just like Christopher Reeve, Superman, Brandon Routh, right? I'm always around, and he is. He's always there in spirit, and it's a never-ending battle. And just when you think it's over, it's not, because you know if Superman's on your side, you just got to, wait to flip the page or just take a collective breath. He's always there. He's always around. And I think that's a pretty good note for me to end off on this.
I think you closed out the conversation absolutely perfectly. And you're right. We are coming to a close here. And on that, I think amongst the 2 hours and 20 minutes, essentially, that we have filled with conversation, I think that it is a testament to why the world needs Superman more than ever in whatever way we can get him. And I do want to thank everybody so much who joined us live and for all of your input and giving us your thoughts and opinions. You definitely always add so much to the body of the conversation. And I want to thank you guys for the support. If you like this video, please make sure to leave a like down below. And of course, check out these two gentlemen below. Obviously, I want to thank my two cohorts here for joining me and having this discussion, because again, it's one of my favorite conversations that I've had on the channel. And that is in no small part due to you guys. So with that being said, we'll go Lewis, and then Comic Boom. What do you guys have coming out on your channels? What do the people have to look forward to? And with that, make sure you guys go check them out. Links in the description below to both of their channels. Lewis?
Well, first of all, thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate that. Again, I love these kind of opportunities, and we're going to do it more often. Right now, first of all, if you guys check out my channel, I really appreciate that. I'm starting to slowly growing it. I took a long hiatus due to health reasons and other stuff, but I'm back now. Things are looking up. And I've been focusing more on video games recently. I do right now, I'm doing a lot of Animal Crossing videos because that's my game. And if you guys love Nintendo and everything, you guys definitely should check those out. But I also have previous videos that I've made that also I think define me as a creator as well as a comic book lover, where I've explained comic books. I've had our witches video is one of my favorite videos that we've done.
That was fun,
and I think that was an amazing video. You should definitely check out our reviews for Titans that we've done in the past in both our channels. We've alternated; those were fun. And just check it out. If you guys give me a chance, I think I like to bring smiles. That's what I'm good at. And if I can bring a smile, one more smile to the world, I think we need them right now. And just before I go, be nice, be kind, wash your hands, and be the change in the world. Be the Superman that the world needs. And even if you just go out there and do one act of kindness, that's all the world needs right now. Forget about subscribing to me. If you can go out there and do one act of kindness, go and do it. And that's how the world's going to get better. Thank you.
But also subscribe to him because he's fucking awesome. So make sure you guys go check him out as well. Boom, my brother, what do you got coming up?
I just honestly, I don't have any well, there's a couple of videos that I'm finishing up, but you know, I'm actually still thinking about it. I'm actually doing a little bit of what Geek Fortress is suggesting, and I think I reiterate his comments, and they're great comments, and that is, you know, we talked about Superman, so why don't, you know, what would Superman do? Well, he probably wouldn't stay cooped up inside. He'd probably go out and fly around for a bit. Now, none of us can fly, but we can go out and enjoy nature a little bit. And maybe, okay, we have to social distance and we got to be responsible. But, you know, I'm doing a lot of yard work lately. Actually, I have a beautiful yard. I mean, I built a privacy fence. I just got a pergola. Built a pergola last weekend. I've stockpiled on Corona and grapefruit beer this weekend. Tomorrow's July 4th. I just want to say to my two American friends here that, you know, happy Independence Day. And you know, for what it's worth, I love my American friends and my American neighbors. And I hope that you guys, we just had Canada Day on July 1st. And I think Canada, we're maybe slightly a little less drama filled than America is right now, but we are, you know, here's hoping that calmer heads will prevail and that we'll all smell the roses a little bit more.
Agreed. 100% agreed. So make sure you guys go check out Boom. He's also on the climb to 1,000 subscribers himself, which are long past due. So you'd be making a mistake not to go check him out. Some of the most unique comic book reviews on the internet. I've been saying that now for, it's crazy to fucking say, almost 2 years. It's fucking crazy, man. And we're also coming up, obviously, on our 50th episode of Let's Talk Comics, a monument of which Comic Boom is a huge part of, which may in fact be the long-awaited Watchmen debate. We'll see. But if you guys want to stick around on my channel, please make sure to subscribe to mine as well. You know, obviously, if this is your first time joining us, you know, the Dark Knight Nation channel is pretty much founded on having deeper, more analytical discussions on why comics are great, what makes them great, the symbolism inside of them, the storytelling that they are capable of, and how we can kind of connect to that in our own lives. And then we obviously review comics kind of with a surgical and analytical point of view, breaking down all the things that work and don't work from a storytelling narrative perspective and also on a technical perspective. So if that's something that interests you, feel free to stick around. I do have a Thor #5 review coming out tomorrow. And if you guys watched my Thor 1 through 4, you would know that I've enjoyed this run pretty thoroughly so far. So does it hold up? Who knows? Go watch the video. This is my failed attempt at clickbait. But end of the day, thank you everybody for watching. Thank you for being a part of the Dark Knight Nation. And we will see you guys in the next episode of Let's Talk Comics. Have a good night, guys.